In this world, the elves enjoyed the carefree centuries, where every day he brings peace and harmony. It was the ripe fruits that became elf from hunger, because everyone could reach a juicy fruit. But to hunt them inspired not the need for food, but the desire to hone the accuracy and grace in the archery. The spirits shared their secrets with them, and deep reflections on the meaning of being accompanied every day. This is exactly how the everyday life flew in harmony and peace. Conveniently resting on the branch and tasting the juicy apple, Isa pleased herself with sweet dreams of aromatic meat. More than 1,000 years have passed since the fate has given her this world, and the restless curiosity has been increasingly calling the elven from a noble family on a long journey in search of a new inspiration. Having reached the 30th anniversary, he understood the truth of his life. Another 120 years have passed before boredom settled in the heart. Hardly milking the apple, Isa suddenly noticed how the ghostly figures of the spirits of the wind were stirring before him. In the end, the main character realized the existence of Elf was a burden for him, far from his personal dream or true purpose. Having mastered the memories of the past life and a deep knowledge of the world, rich in cultural treasures, the hero notices a flashy deficit in this world of true emotions and unforgettable experiences. The forest element was for the highest elves' home and inspiration. In its comfort they found peace, not knowing about the anxiety and vanity of the outside world. The highest elves were destined to live for more than 1,000 years, and even when their body was leaving strength, the soul did not disappear without a trace. It reborn into a spirit that remained in nature, protecting this world until the end of the centuries. More than a century has passed in a continuous course of time, but it was already felt as the forces were gradually leaving the body and soul. The border was very close. The gaze fell on a sparrow, who jumped side by side, and an almost elusive gesture suggested that he was tired of this fruit. Fatigue took the mountain. The little sparrow immediately waved the wings and disappeared from the field of view of Elephant, leaving him with the idea that, at least, this bird was surprisingly smart. The awareness has woke up that such existence will not allow such another century. The expectations of the end of the world seemed endless and unbearably difficult. The tireless desire to grasp the unknown prompted to plunge into new feelings, to discover many more impressions, and only when the heart would be filled could this world be left by turning into a spirit or something else. Long hair remains to lie on the floor, and fresh hairstyle refreshed not only appearance, but also mood. Lightness on the soul appeared as a change in the image. The thick elfy forests, similar to the endless green ocean, were called the Plough. Beyond their borders, the unknown was dominated. No inhabitant these lands have yet discovered their secrets. Isa carefully packed backpacks, decisively preparing for the journey, which promised to change everything. Farewell words remained unspoken. Among these people did not find those who would hug him for farewell. The belief in the leading power of fate gave Kiro confidence. Significant meetings are inevitable, and the necessary people will surely cross with him again. The last minutes before the road, the guy spent a thorough check of everything he needed. A strong bow and arrows hid a bag in a shaggy. He carefully placed food in a bag, and in addition he did not forget about a sharp stone knife. Time was racing relentlessly. It has passed half a month since the hero left the forest thicket behind. As he crossed the boundary of the magic barrier, the world beyond the promises of adventures and the unknown. However, as soon as he stepped along the steep river, a wild forest wolf suddenly broke into the traveler. The prey pleased the boy's soul pleased. He already clearly imagined how forest fangs and sharp claws would come in handy. Large canines will be a great material for creating a dagger or knife, and smaller ones could easily be turned into an original necklace, stringing on a strong rope. However, first of all, it was necessary to find an experienced craftsman, someone who will be able to teach how to treat this good and make useful things. On the plain, an endless horizon unfolded in front of him, spreading in all sides, as if the sky had touched the earth. The fascinating beauty of this species incredibly captivated the soul, forcing her breathing. The slope opened spaces in front of his eyes, where there seemed to be no limit to dreams and adventures. Stripping to the nearest city, the soldier for the first time felt a trembling from meeting the wonderful human world. He was stopped at the gate. It turned out that the right to get inside has to pay a duty. Entrance costs only 20 copper for those who have a certificate, while the rest pay a whole silver. The explanation was simple. The money opened the way forward. However, noticing the confusion on the boy's face, the suspicion came in his soul. And is he familiar to this concept at all? Awareness of the true importance of the situation did not leave room for hope. The feeling of hopelessness made it shyly lower the head, because the pockets were empty. With warmth in the gaze, the soldier turned to the boy, asking if there would be any of his acquaintances in the city. If necessary, these people would agree to help you get a loan, to help now and then get a devoured. There was no desire to accept such a proposal, but still voiced the idea to ask for the purchase of forest wolf fangs. As long as the conversation with the guard, a whole group of strangers emerged suddenly behind her back. The loud voice of the girl from the band came in the air. She called Isa, asking to approach for a moment. Without any hesitation, grabbing the elf by the hand, the girl sharply took him to the side. Stopping, she returned and cast a shrewd look towards Is. The quiet whisper of the guy crashed into the evening silence with a difficult question: whether he really faces a real high elf. In the world of ordinary elves, the figures of high elves have always glittered with an unearthly glow. No shadow could hide this light, because it emerged from the depths of their eternal soul. Recognizing that it will not work here, the guy agreed. If this is not difficult for him, the girl sought to hear directly from him, which forced such an extraordinary personality to appear in the city of people. Confessing that a lonely life in the forest has long lost its attractiveness for him, the guest shared his desire to see the world. The girl cast a distrustful look at the interlocutor, not dare to believe him. The hero suddenly suggested to call himself Eyes. This is how the local residents knew him in remote huts. However, she continued to see him with the same alertness, probably having a great weirdo. Face features constantly acquired new shades, and in the eyes there was a fatigue from long coexistence with people. The Aider suddenly realized he is not an ordinary child in front of him, because the elves change the influence of the outside world. After delving into her thoughts, the girl suddenly returned to the boy. Recognizing that such a proposal for a noble Elpheus would sound inappropriate, still emphasized. Thanks to influential acquaintances with ease, she is ready to reach out to him. The smile shone down his face when gratitude came from the whole heart. This simple support was enough. The girl did not hide as a surprise, hearing such an answer. Sleeping on one knee, the girl gently touched the lip of the hero's hands, filled with gratitude and thirst for a new meeting. At that moment, the young man was confused, because he believed that his hand had to strive for this gesture of gratitude first. Sincere gratitude for the support accompanied the dreams of how the first step to the city, their paths would disperse as soon as possible. The fingers lay on the heart, and with confidence in the voice, a promise came to the person, known as Isosam, the young 6-star magician, known under the name of the White Lake, who is ready to make an entrance fee. Isosam said that the title of 6-star is only the most experienced adventurers. The rank system was created specifically for beginners, and the highest peak was considered the 7th rank, 7 stars. All over the country, only a few managed to reach such a mark. But the hexagonal teams were the elite of the newspapers, and they were not equal. A satisfied smile blossomed on the boy's face until Isa supported him, applauding. At this point, the girl cleverly set up an agreement with a soldier in the coming weeks, and then a gesture called the Isa to join the conversation. The guy was met with warm words, happily informed that from now on the gates of the city were open for him at any moment. At the same time, the children warned, in the case of troubles we'll have to answer the one who has been guilty of a newcomer. The simplicity of local rules was astonishing. To avoid theft, not to contact underground sellers of weapons, not to violate public order. For foreigners who were delayed here longer than the day, they provided a separate tax for the hospitality of the city. Armed with the knowledge of each point, the Azer understood. You will have to keep prison at every step. After careful acquaintance with all the terms, each left signature on the document, confirming their consent. The name of the boy fell into the eye of Walter. He quickly declared himself a Rodner from Harthouse, warmly patted the young man on his shoulder, and smiled sincerely. In the voice, there was confidence. In the case of any troubles, you can always safely turn to him. The doors are wide open, and the owner appears in front of his friends. His sincere greetings envelop the guests, immersing them in the friendly atmosphere of the town of Vist Court. The first familiar look at the big city lit in the boy an unspeakable admiration. His eyes slid through unfamiliar streets, enthusiastically absorbing every detail of the surrounding world. Meanwhile, one of the girls in their company was in an easy tone. Did he think about his plans for the future? There were no designs or goals before the eyes. A friendly advice from a girl, to become an adventurer and to make a certificate. He sounded for him, like the first step in an unknown future. Thinking about her words, he still fully focused on the case that now had the greatest importance to him. It was necessary to find a special place to process the prey of the forest wolf. The hero asked the guys where you can best cope with this task nearby. The upset flashed in the boy's eyes. But in the end he acknowledged that the highest quality goods in the whole city are in the gnome shop. Immediately wondered if the hero did not think of something that would be useful for simple elves and would benefit from selling. Ancient legend about dwarfs from elves' stories immediately emerged in memory. There were rumors. Once the courtyards dared to snap a spark of living fire into nature and imprisoned it in their furnace. Be that as it may, there was always enmity between the elves and the yards, and in this, Aaron there was rights. It is unlikely. Despite everything, the desire to meet with dwarves remained unchanged, if, of course, comrades would not mind. Even realizing that Aaron may not like this idea, the guy relentlessly lured his curiosity. He wanted to find out where the mysterious dwarf workshop is located. The surprise engulfed me when the confession was made. He has no hatred of the novel. In a moment he explained. Life did not bring him with these creatures, so there was no reason for enmity. Metal creatures and gnomes were disgusting, because the forest trees trembled in front of sharp objects withdrawn with the hands of these masters. Naively blurred your thoughts, and the man decided, the reason lies in hatred of him. Thoughts about the hotel night were not rest, but empty pockets were breaking all plans. Having decided on a desperate step, he turned to the girl with hope, suggested that she buy at least something of his things. Having stretched the girl the fruit, he noted, from this amazing vegetable once made an elixir of youth. So, perhaps his strength would still be useful for her. A whole handful of a delicate derived in the hands of the girl. Such a gift from the hero causes her to die with surprise. The fragrant fruit, the favorite treats of the elves, opened a gate to this mysterious city, due to the care of Aaron. Not surprisingly, the hope of grateful to the girl for such a gift was great. Having stretched out another juicy fruit as a token of gratitude, he sincerely thanked for his support and indifference. The vigilant look of the girl was inseparably sliding on the face of the boy, and for the hero remained a mystery what was happening between them. Hod insisted not to expose these fruits for a general examination without urgent need. In addition, she promised to reveal all the secrets about money and the true price of human life in the morning. Unpaid that we visit the blacksmith only after all the important cases were completed. She carefully checked whether I really realized it. There was no way back. The hero broke out the determination to master everything you need, even if you have to take knowledge just from the air. The morning began with a visit to the forge, where the hero, crossing the threshold, congratulated the masters who worked inside. Silence and desertity prevailed inside the forge. The master seems to be detached in business and will not return soon. Taking a variety of weapons on the shelves, the hero did not notice how the blacksmith came to the hall. The friendly word and apologies for the delay were made in the silence of the workshop, returning the guest to reality. Walking his hand to a soaked head of the forehead, the gnome with a smile noted that the guy really understood in the choice, and assured, among his treasures, there are things even more refined. Hardly the hero returned to the gnome as the careful owner of the store immediately calculated the elf. Without hiding the annoyance, the gnome raised the question of the purpose of the visit, and then decisively announced, the elves in his bench would not sell anything, let them Greek. Smiling, the hero congratulated the dwarf, turning to him as the man did before it. After studying the weapon, the guest noted its exceptional quality, but immediately warned, today he plans to buy anything. The choice of the base for the future knife has long been decided. After apologizing, he reached out a gap with a neatly written name of the necessary material. The angry look slid towards the man. The memory of a recent image still painfully touched his heart. However, even this did not ruin the true joy of communicating with children. Before that, he sincerely thought that the elves were only able to choose drinks. But a new experience has opened before him in still unknown side of their lives. The heart slowly calmed down, and a strong hand squeezed her fingers, releasing the rope holding ice. Inside was the curiosity. Why did this character appear under his nose? Is it not for the sake of any worthless puff? If the suspicions come true, the offender was already ready to study the uninvited guest. The wolf fang flashed on the palm of the hero, just one during a tense duel in the forest. He reached out to his oppression, proposing to arouse a knife from a rare prey, so as not to waste what he got his own effort. The explanation was clearly made. It was not the usual fang of Alpha Wow, but a trophy of the great wolf, a creature much more powerful. For such a beast, the amateurs do not take. They do not save tricks here. They all solve skills and solid experience. The absence of a knife forced the young man to give up even the thought of grasping the skin or meat. Only spicy fangs and claws remained in his stock, and the courage lacked to take the risk. Sighing with a certain weight in his voice, the man noted that he could teach to use the fang. With sufficient power, Isa will easily earn a living in the adventure world. I came up with a proposal for me, but I shook my head quietly, politely giving up such help. Having declared his thirst for new adventures, the guy confessed that he wanted to get not only a knife, but also other things that were forged from fangs and claws. He was lured by the art of blacksmithing, so much that the soul sought to try herself in this case for almost 10 years. Such revelation stunned the gnome, and he frozen in silent grip. Suddenly, he swung his head with his hands, glanced at the guy, mentally noting, "This guest is not a prostate, but a real spirit from the forest, where witchcraft and whims live nearby." But even in spite of its weirdness, it is good to put up with a similar company than with someone arrogant and arrogant. The joy engulfed the soul when the gnome agreed to share the secrets of the blacksmith. It would be an unspeakable sorry if the famous Great Will Fang remained out of work. The road that you walk can remain incomprehensible to others, but over time, one whose path will cross with yours. The stretched hand of the ripple called the gnome to the union, opening up new opportunities. However, the sharp look of the gnome slid the mysterious laboratory, in his soul still glowing doubt whether to trust this mysterious proposal. Without hesitation, the blacksmith squeezed the elf's palm firmly, realizing that he was seriously set and does not plan to retreat. The news about the events with Ace instantly stunned the whole team. Unexpected disclosure made the girl and her comrades grip her heads from crazy shock. The idea of why Isa should work in the store number did not give her rest. He did not solve the girl's words. If the blacksmith's people really belonged to the people of the blacksmith, he would definitely receive money from him. The arena finally chose a shelter for recreation is not a simple hide, but a magnificent hotel, where every detail breathes sophistication. Imagination drew a picture of travelers' meetings. Thoughts were immediately filled with a seductive aroma of freshly baked bread, which attracted with its drunken smell of wheat and a juicy steak, from which a fragrant steam came. The saliva immediately turned to her mouth. The guy admitted in his voice that he was not currently capable of such, but he would definitely become independent and will thank Aaron in full. On this remark, the girl only shook her head, because a completely different torment of her heart. According to her, it became clear that the iron smell could have alarmed the forest, forcing the trees to lock in itself, and the spirits were frightened. It was enough of the idea that it can happen to him. If the spirit turns away, it was enough for the heart to be cold. The objection was confident. Only the smell of metal cannot cause the hostility of the spirits to it. The alarming rustle cuts the air when the axe with the lace falls on the trunk. The tree is not delighted with this attitude, but powerless to resist. Sometimes, angry with pollution, spirits were erupted due to poisoning that left behind harmful minerals. Hearing this, the elves immediately concluded the spirits probably did not tolerate metal, and instantly spread this opinion among their own. But the protagonist firmly believed, it is only necessary to put a pot of flour near the baby, as a real friendship will be born between them. The young man appealed to the teacher to allow to bring to the class. The dwarf responded only by a silent look, sighed hard. The young man regarded such an answer as unwritten consent. Now everything depended on himself, and the observation of the plant could be continued. The temptation to share with the girl the stories about the spirits almost prevailed, but the desire to conclude a successful agreement still won. Instead of fables, he unfolded a whole arsenal of rifles and, in a conspiratorial tone, offered these chickens, hoping for a quick sale. The merchant assured that this thing is impeccable, because it was created by the gnome. In addition, its purchase is facilitated by a noble purpose. Everyone agreed. Isa is unlikely to be angry because of such a find. The smile played on his lips, and with a touch of a joke sounded. If the attitude was light-hearted, the patience would end here. But it is only necessary to treat care, and there will be no objections. Isida's vigilant view grabbed a detail that remained out of the girl's attention. Politely contacting the seller, she again voiced her request, as if trying to buy this mysterious knight. Give a promise to take care of him with all the warmth of the heart. From the side, the bitter truth has opened. No even boldest deeds are able to finally erase the ancient hostility between elves and dwarves. The dwarf was aware. High-quality weapons found its owner. An experienced adventure seeker gratefully purchased it from the hero. A few simple words and a smile, and on faces the satisfaction flashed. Saying goodbye to the girl with a light wave of hand, I confidently moved on my own way. He has already missed the year since the protagonist has rooted in this city. It was only necessary to appear new opportunities to update the equipment, as crowds of buyers were rushed into the store. At the same time, a team of employees also grew. The hero, keeping up with the development, mastered another useful skill: learned to forge nails. Metal things in those years were a rare treasure, and the peasants were not enough without simple tools. Forges were perceived as if the rescue islands were referred to as old friends. Through Izar, a number of requests from the locals came to the teacher. People begged at least a few nails, not dreaming of cauldrons or sharp knives. Watching how with the arrival of the elf stream of guests in the forge was noticeably revived, the owner suggested an unusual assistant to try his own strength in a new business. The wise master, assessing the potential of the newcomer, promised to become a good mentor in the craft of koval. Exercise with nails instead of eyes brought true pleasure. The number of orders increased steadily, and payment became more generous. But despite this, the main burden of the cost of everyday life was still on Aaron's shoulders. Thanks to her, he learned to count every penny. Only one night near her cost about 5,000 yins. Once in the role of the student, the guy was surprised not only for the lesson, but also for his own studies of the world of spirits. The palm that hesitated to accept coins met a persistent look. It was difficult to refuse. Later, Issa, still with mixed feelings, replied this story by Rodner's soldier, and he did not refrain from laughing, scattered with a cheerful laugh. Behind the glasses in the bar between the boys was a conversation, where the family remembered how she had already discovered him. Since then, she has not allowed herself to throw it to his or her own thing, whatever happened. Gathering to leave the hollow yard, the hero heard Rodney's proposal to hold him to a reliable shelter. In such a place, Aaron could finally look away and come to his senses. Thoughts drove to the memorial moment when fate brought with the numb character Aaron and the mysterious Rodneys. Incredible happiness filled the heart due to those who became part of his life. The detachment went on a long business trip, so the guy decided to wait and discuss it with her when she would finally return. Martin's girl from the airness team broke into the forge at lightning speed. In response, the guy met her with a sincere smile, though it was not difficult to notice the anxiety that was reflected in her look. The anxiety appeared in the glare of her eyes. Suddenly, Nadia burst into his voice when the girl asked the hero to stand up for him. Only his power could curb the angry spirit. Growing at the mentor, the young man received a silent permission from the gnome. The companion squeezed his hand, eagerly moving up faster. At the doorstep of the hotel, Rose heard the girl's confession. These events hide a complex and confusing story. Undoubtedly, this event left a bitter precipitate. The message came from the city of Halarotet more than 2 weeks ago, and this long road was a real test for news. The request was sent not only to the searchman from the White Lake, but immediately to the representative office of Elfin Dukavidis. The curse of the humanoid water spirit poisoned the water of the river flowing through the city of Garret. It was the Vesta that the task was to remove this terrible attack. Immediately there was a suspicion. It was someone's reckless actions that angered the water spirit. The consequences were not delayed. A strange ailment swept the city, because the water suddenly turned into a dangerous poison for every resident. It was then that the mass death of fish began in the river. Although the surrounding vegetation remained intact, the water spirit would not dare to poison his own source of life. The hero shone. The cause of the disaster was not the curse, but the real pollution of water. Galarot grew in an empty space just because 10 years ago, ore deposits were dug here. Pollution from port work was quickly written off on the evil spirit, which was invented by the locals, so as not to take guilty. The owner of the new town may need to think with whom he contacted, trusting such tricks. He shared with him the story of the owner, who belonged to a new aristocratic kind, was distinguished by an unseen thirst for the development of intelligence, and gained great confidence of the king. The confusion engulfed the girls. None imagined what to take the next step. The Most High may have solved the cause and overtook the blame on another, and may be still unaware of anything about the alarming situation around. In the memoirs of further events in the eyes of the girl, tears were made. Aaron strongly rushed to the epicenter of events, trying to pacify the fairly angry spirit that hanging over the city with a true threat. Meanwhile, the crust remained aside, ready to stand up for everyone if the situation gets out of control. In these moments, Iranian returned to his support, and only his gaze revealed to him the whole essence of events. Among the trials, the strength of the sorcerer of the spirits in it was constantly strengthened, and this random advantage was a real gift of fate. It would be enough to show care of the requirements, and the task would seem easy. However, if the aquatic environment is destroyed, the familiar space immediately becomes something deeper than just a regular room. But then, the connection of your spirit with this world inevitably breaks. The real essence of the problem Aaron realized instantly, and without delay, he went to look for a way out. He had no hostility in it. He treated the spirit rather than a friend, rather than an opponent. Always ready to reach for help, Martini heard from him advice to turn to someone for support. Ancient knowledge of metals allowed them to understand not only their strength, but also a hidden danger. Friends suggested that you apply for an experience dome. After listening to their history, the blacksmith thought for a moment, and then confidently stated that he was well aware of the essence of the case. If the blacksmiths' union had taken up the investigation, its results would definitely reach the ears of the king himself. The unexpected willingness of the blacksmith to take care of the investigation stunned us. The thoughts of such a quick consent did not even arise. It was enough to quit the idea of getting to know someone from the alliance. That was over. Without a wise leak trainer, the store will continue to be a wasteland, closing the door firmly for everyone. A calm voice came. If the investigation will take care of a regular blacksmith from the guild, the news is unlikely to reach the king himself. But when it gets into the hands of the legendary master, His Majesty simply will not be able to stay away. Much weight in the kingdom belonged to them, as most of these people joined influential local associations. Dwarfs did not even want to hear approval from elves. The views crossed, and the sudden laughter escaped outside, as if out of the air. The dwarf only blinked, and without realizing what it caused fun. The events unfolded surprisingly. As the real parts of this place, employees admired every little thing that happened around. The closure of the mines, along with the Garit, in their opinion, would instantly push the prices for metals to heaven. And an attempt to start developing a new deposit would undoubtedly flave a powerful resistance among locals. Serious concern engulfed their hearts. So the residents sincerely asked the heroes not to take the risk of traveling unfamiliar paths. Twolf worshipped the blacksmiths, who remained near the stove, and then suggested that he first go to the capital, where it would be possible to gather allies and repel trouble together. Without a shadow of doubt in the heart, the young man entrusted the care of the mentor man and went with him to the city of Galart. Bordeaux steeply stepped on the cart, and the thought was in Issa, before him, a true high elf, who chose to live among the common people. It remains to take such actions that only a representative of his noble kind is capable of. The road led the characters to the camp where they already expected a pale edge from the team. The fire illuminated his tired face with dark circles under his eyes and sharply outlined cheeks. However, seeing Martin, the Lord immediately dispelled the gloom and greeted the friend with genuine joy. Fate gave the opportunity to be in this place, and it seems that he was assigned an important role here. The forest enveloped a thick, impenetrable fog. It was only necessary to step into his arms, as the gray dream became even denser. The condensate drops gathered on the windows and pipes, as if the moisture was settling inside. Martin was in a hurry between these traps, spending almost a whole minute for almost a moment. Once fresh air is filling this space again, everyone will immediately move from here to safer places. People stay here are a real danger. Having apologized for his delay, Kiro warmly said goodbye to everyone and went in search of the arena. A familiar voice came behind. It was Issa. Amazed at how far Erna was able to move in such a short time, Issa felt true pride, because she had the happiness to call this girl her friend. The tears failed to restrain Aaron next to the noble Issa. Her pleas for returning were heard as a sincere request, but the hero assured that he was holding power over all and prompted her to trust his further concern for him. Her funds covered all his housing expenses, so the debt to her demanded the proper return. Running her hand on the face, the girl erased her tears, as the guide gently reminded that the team was already gathering and waiting for her. She can come back to her friends. After the Heilfic has become an immortal spirit, a balance of forces was established between them. Before such power, as Aaron, it was only necessary to bow her head. She was completely subordinated to the spirit, because it was not to contradict him. Finally, it was an understanding that it was time to act. Increased with curiosity, the hero turned to the mysterious spirit that protected these magic sources, seeking to find out what is the cause of such ardent anger of the ancient being. In the heart of the girl, a fire of indignation broke out. A look full of anger slid on the elf. She undertook to share her story without hiding the image and experiences. Ancient times are remembered by a people who, with genuine respect, leaned in front of nature. The surrounding world was a shrine for them, and the spirit of the source, magnified to the divine state, became the central figure of their rites. The striking forces conquered these lands, forcing those who survive to adapt to other people's customs. But deep in the soul, their faith remained unwavering. Strongly opposed to the mining project, the residents were forced to leave their native land. It was forbidden to intervene without clear consent, and the tribe deliberately avoided his assistance in resolving the conflict. At the same time, the rivers lost their lives rapidly, and their waters became dark and unsuitable for life. Noticing this disaster, the spirit has come to the conclusion: foreigners need to be washed away from these lands to restore harmony. The determination was pushed to the struggle for themselves, loved ones, and the planet itself. The harmful emissions were not destined to destroy the outside world with impunity. Suddenly, the road crossed the little girl, and in a moment everything became clear. The spirit made the final decision. For the sake of this child, for the sake of its world, the darkness is no longer a place. Evil must disappear forever. I had to admit that the situation was disappointing, because the spirit has long made its own decision. Catching her mood, he tried to return the course of events in the right direction, as an experienced mill that directs the flow of the river. Listening carefully, he sincerely persuaded the spirit. His anger is well known. Starting to realize their intention, the awareness came unexpectedly. Rage, like a wild flow, capable of destroying both guilty and those who simply do not see the truth with a pure heart. The sense suggested that no anger should lie on the shoulders of people who sincerely understand the complexity of this world. It affected children most. Local babies were amazing with the similarity with those who were so expensive to her. The recklessly, after all, after himself, once the famous spirit lost respect and honor, which he was enveloped by people. The tears covered their eyes, and in memory the images of those who expressed their gratitude for the gift, which brought in their lives well-being and joy. Fascinated by the fact that a friend has already undertaken the purification of the square, the hero was full of faith. The water spirit refrained from anger against the innocent. Finally, Galeritis was saved from death. The Noma teacher announced that the Guild of the Blacksmith had already taken up the difficulty at the mine. From now on, any work on this object is only allowed after their approval. Finally, the real cause of the incident has become a well-known community. The guilt for all the troubles with the intelligent was put on the mayor, and he was immediately deprived of positions. The decision to expand the locals was abolished, so the hope has opened. Now residents can return home and enjoy a peaceful life without fear. The hero dreamed of relief that from now on this city would settle again, joy and peace. Over time, the ex-lord cut off his own life, plunging into the tragic silence of his bathroom. The monarch who gave him this high position was found in 3 days without signs of life in his own bath. Slap the heart of Lord Boer ignited in him a long-standing image from the king, and rumors argued that, without regretting his own life, he devoted himself to a terrible curse for the monarch. The mystery of the truth continues to be hidden in the darkness of the unknown. Several years of hard work in the workshop gave ISO confidence in their abilities. The first products, weapons and armor, have already pleased the eye with strength and beauty. One day, a friend appeared on the threshold of the forge, who played an important role in the future ISO. The guy with his youthful face politely expressed his apology, and then declared the desire to buy this mace. He wondered with interest whether there would be armor here that would be in harmony with his new purchase, and gave it to the unnoticed, to pay a gathering generously, a whole bag of coins. Interest in the mace created by Isa broke out in it instantly. If it is able to hold this weapon skillfully in one hand, the kit will perfectly complement the protective shield. Leather boots will give confidence in every step, providing stability even on the most dangerous surface. The smile got on his face. Thoughts swarmed around his own power, apparently not so weak. Who knows, perhaps it will be a real traveler. If the fate is helping him, the money will appear. Then he will return to get the best ammunition. As soon as this moment comes, there will be a chance to choose your vocation again. This is what our hero dreams of. His heart burns with determination, and the soul feels fresh inspiration. The farewell breath of the store responded in the soul of the hero, who was already looking forward to the next unforgettable meeting. In hot smoke, the forge of a young man for a day was skillfully forged until a bow was born under his hands, which hit the target with incredible accuracy. As soon as the hair reached the desired length again, Aaron gladly took the scissors and quenched it. The variety of cases was fascinated. It was necessary to repair armor, to crush giant monsters. Then an unexpected meeting with the baby fell. 10 years of study of blacksmithing have been a moment. But one day the mentor brought the ESO news that struck the boy to the depths of his soul. The surprise engulfed everyone when it became known. A gnome master recently married. The blacksmith only reminded the newly made bride of his brother, and here everything came into place. It was through this event that the hero was invited to continue the gnome family tradition. Suddenly, the hero wondered the age of the gnome. What did the blacksmith puzzled? They say only now did such a question come about. To the surprise of all, it became known that the oppression is 90, but for the representatives of his people, it is no different from his youth, because this age is equal to human 25 to 30 years. It seemed like a real challenge, and it was even more teasing his curiosity. The gnome with a jokingly smile lightly hit the guy on his head, throwing, "Once you will have to think about your own future." Hands flew to the head. There are so many things ahead, and a lot of time will take. 10 years have passed since the mentor of the master gathered numerous students. Some of these students can already be called true craftsmen. They are able to open their own workshops and share craft with others. Even if the Noma teacher leaves the forge, his pets will easily fill this gap in the world of blacksmithing. Seeds sown with care and endurance have finally grown into a majestic spreading tree that is full of life and strength. The chance to gain knowledge from the gnome fell only to those who had already owned hammer and anvil. In the first steps, the hero did not even know about such rules. Inexperience made it too self-confident. Such lightness seemed to be pungent with nothing more than boldness, because only real blacksmiths were allowed to study from the master. No beginners had entry here. Having made the decision, the gnome finally invited the boy to become his student, and between them, as if a sparkling ray of confidence flashed. Armed with a new hope, the young man decided to ask a question that has long been spinning in his head. Who is the mysterious girl whose name was already in the conversation of the dwarf? In response, the master only cunningly felt and joked that such questions need to have a lot of bravery, especially when there is someone with a kitchen carbine in his hand. Over the past 10 years, the reincarnation has touched not only the blacksmiths themselves, but also what they became. Here is at least the band White Lake. At one time, they glowed on stage, receiving the title of a 7-star team. However, only 3 years passed, and the team broke up. In the end, Kryasa combined his fate with Martin Precitus, legalizing their union with marriage. Leaving behind the pinnacle of career achievements, they both felt fatigue. But with her woke up and hope to invest in the education of the next generation of desperate adventurers. The hero repeatedly convinced everyone it was not possible to look for a better choice. Leaving the city, the girl boldly moved forward, towards unknown roads and future meetings. Her words sounded goodbye. Real adventures are just beginning, and there are many tests ahead, because its path is still far from completion. The smile glowed on her face during farewell, and to restrain the influx of caring advice to the girl was unable to. The instructions were pouring abundantly. It seemed to the boy that a caring mother appeared before him. Among the gentle words was the main thing. It is time to rely only on your own strength. However, the town, saying goodbye, left many mysteries and residents that should not be forgotten. Particularly urged the guy to remember the caution and keep himself from all kinds of unexpected adventures. In the city, the figure of the Rodner soldier was the first on the path of the hero. His military service soon led to an increase. Rodner reached the title of Captain Warta. One day, in a new rank, he visited the hero, suggested to split a glass of hop drink with him. Time is going, and friendly meetings in a cozy dining room remain an unchanging tradition. A few fun conversations and a mug of your favorite drink again unite them together. The door of Mr. Isa appeared that the young man from the shop, who was destined to become a glorious warrior. With his voice, the young man informed Mr. Isa about his new achievement. He rose to 5 stars, opening his way to the dreamy level of the White Lake. The fearless nature and natural thirst for adventures made him almost invincible. Elf, catching this news, gladly congratulated the young brave with a well-deserved success. The last decade has brought so many events and experiences to the young man that all the previous 150 years seemed to seem only the shadow of the past. No previous experience was compared to a whirlwind of emotions and adventures that had fallen to his fate during this time. There was no doubt about this. Nature addressed the hero with an interesting question. What plans he has for life when he returns to the kingdom of dwarfs? The young man wondered, and in his eyes his determination stumbled. He finally said he seeks to become a real sword master and master the art of magic. In search of places in the capital where you can master the desired craft for considerable money. The jar settled on the stool and plunged into reflections. His own spiritual power. Is not this a special form of magic? A barely noticeable smile ran on his face when he said that the guy continues to be a real secret. Throwing these words, he turned around, noting that Ace was free to act at his own discretion. He heard the dwarf amazed his name. The blacksmith punched his head, acknowledging that he was faced with the best student, and the long-standing friendship between them would forever remain inseparable. Laughter escaped on its own. This smile seemed too funny that she did not go away and did not correspond to his usual appearance at all. Blossoming to tears, the hero with a joking irony said that the path to the kingdom of dwarfs for such a high elf as he was almost closed forever. Therefore, Oswald remained for him only an expensive mentor. In these words, Oswald smiled gently and reminded, no matter what, he will always remain a friend who cannot be forgotten. After a handshake with the gnome, the carefree laughter of the young man suddenly went into sincere tears. The gnome asked not to lose self-control because it was this guy always distinguished among others, not at all like the present. As, probably, the blacksmith would have added. The joke blow of the fist in the abdomen had to lift the mood. Then a request for 50 years of life was made. In response to the promise to visit the kingdom of dwarfs later, a light smile shone on her face when the words of encouragement touched his heart. A true master worthy of the highest glory would certainly gain a crown. Only the king will become, and the path of elves in these lands will open again to each of them. And then, the ice just melts. In the life of gnomes, blacksmithing took a prominent place. It was only necessary to know the craft with the whole heart and soul. Incredible opportunities were opened before the masters, and the path to power and the royal crown became real. Not a minute on a break. The desire to become the best made you move on, even if this time it was only a tiny step taken for the sake of future victory. For a few minutes, the forge was put at the disposal of Isaha, while the master, having entrusted the affairs of one of the students, went in his business. During this time, the Isa managed to give up a knife. Cavalli's official certificate reached Izava, actually pulling it out of the hands of stubborn guild masters. The blacksmiths did not leave a shock for a long time, because for the first time in the history of the elf received a cherished license, and even had to reflect on the annoying gnome. At the end of this struggle, the long-awaited license and a new knife, expelled from the wolf muzzle, were already lying in the arsenal of Isa. Before leaving the city boundaries, Isa tasted a juicy fruit, gaining strength to travel. The persistent journey to the capital lasted for almost 10 days, and the path on foot and even seemed endless. Faced with a chance, he immediately walks forward, plunging into a deep thinking about the past 10 years. This is how the way brought the traveler to the capital. Lee Ayes came to the heart of Lundria, the majestic Vorfil, and was confused before the grandiose of this city. Barely. The elf Koval followed the city gate, as the surrounding residents immediately recognized him. The legendary master, known among people, appeared here to master the intricacies of sword and magic. His status in the city was quite respectful, so the registration official hurried to make his apologies for his previous care. Nevertheless, I have not forgotten to mention that the characters have been extremely unusual lately. Once in the heart of the capital, he was in a hurry to stock up on the provision. In the heart of the kingdom, Ludria stands the capital with the proud name Verfel. Unlike the restrained news court, life always boils here. The streets of the Haminchi, and the atmosphere is full of hospitality. The city is famous for a large number of schools and academies where future swordmasters master their art. The city is famous for 3 leading schools in the skill of owning a sword, known together as 3 disciplines. Ludrians, that's how this style was called. The focus was a sword and a shield, a restrained, thoughtful way of combat, which was admired by both simple warriors and noble knights. He did not see anything amazing in him. Moreover, the technique also involved the possession of the sword with both hands. Bright paintings from the past came back in memory. Ludrians allowed not only to cut a sword, but also to ram the enemy with a shoulder, to apply kicks, everything to win. Cryasa also used similar techniques. But of all the styles, the latter seemed to be the greatest, a huge emphasis on defense. A solid, insurmountable wall that could stop any attack. Everything in it was subject to defense, not an attack. The hero immediately realized a similar approach is not his way. In memory, ancient stories about another style, which seemed only legend, were not found, because they did not find it. For a moment, Zero wondered, thinking what style would come to his liking. The unexpected look caught on the bright street artists who staged a real show right in the middle of the sidewalk. In the crowd, the girl was especially distinguished. Her movements with the sword were full of grace and strength. Every trick fascinated the audience. Skillfully waving his sword, the girl cut the apple in half. The fruit immediately flew into 2 equal halves just on the table. There was no faith that it was possible to make such a perfect cut. The sword did not seem blunt, but still remained a mystery how she managed to achieve such cleanliness of the blade. The spectacle of the perfect movements could not help but fascinate. With his own eyes he watched these workshops of maneuvers, and the admiration was filled with the soul. The hero decided to approach the girl who gently wiped her blades from the traces of a recent battle. The silver coin gleamed gently on the table in front of a confused girl when she suddenly praised her talent. The guy enthusiastically stated that her skill was able to capture her heart, and with an unconcealed enthusiasm, asked for permission to become her student. Understanding the words of Izabud, the fox asked him again. But the hero did not give up. He persistently proved his willingness to pay for training and take up any job, just to get a chance. The supplication was torn from his mouth every now and then, and the desperate hope kept him in place, the intimidation clamping her tongue, and the words froze on her mouth. Meanwhile, the guy sincerely admitted that for the first time, he heard about the technique she was doing so hard. Nothing could stop the desire to grasp this style to perfection, even if it did not rest. According to her proposal, the guy moves with her to Dodzio. Although the girl is firmly convinced that the reality he will see in place will certainly make him change his decision. The moment she froze when the gloomy facade of the dilapidated building opened in front of him. It was here, in the legendary once Yasogi paradise, that generations of masters have mastered one of 4 great martial arts. The winner in the duel was Lodron, having defeated the head of the school. Despite the fact that the battle was passed with a Beautifor's weapon, the force of impact seemed fatal. The result was a tragic death. The students of the passionate desire for revenge were among the students, but the stormy disputes about who deserved to become the next head only split their team. The designed retribution remained unfulfilled, and Dodzio could not return to the usual life after experienced. The mother was overlooked and cast alone in the brown, which ignited a fierce fight inside the Yasog Rai, finally destroying her former essence. The girl said only surprise. The intention was far from obvious. She has patiently explained, now this style is used only for spectacles, not as a real combat equipment. In fact, it was the only heritage that remained from the parent lessons. The techniques she invented, and brought to perfection under the vigilant eye of the mentor. A very recognizable style could have reinforced the curiosity of the students of the log school, so the girl advised Issa to act separately and not to take risks together. The light touch of the guy stopped her half a step, and with a sincere smile he assured, "There is no reason to worry." Moreover, the technique she just showed was the art of which he always dreamed of. It was difficult to say something about the strength of students, but it did not give caution. No crumbs or only skepticism. True talents seem to be a rare find here, which is surprising only in exceptional cases. Even before the test began, the guy asked to give him a sword for a week to work carefully with a blade. In this form, weapons will not allow you to reserve the duel with it. Not hiding surprise, the girl looked carefully at the young man and wondered who he really was. The answer was confident. In front of her stands Alphabetus of the highest level, which has the perfect skill of archery from the bow and virtually master the art of calling the spirits. In addition, a certified blacksmith for an advanced class. If she does not mind, he wants to become the first student of the Rebornia Paradise School. The sudden appearance of the woman behind broke their silence, and she with a smile noted the unexpected appearance of the guests. The news that Isa will now work here and settle in the guest room stunned the woman. Hearing this, she met Isa's gaze, who politely greeted. Both did not hide astonishment, taking his views on the cinema. The voltage in the air increased instantly. The mother of Tina was suffering from breast disease, so the hero headed into the forest, looking for rescue herbs. Adding to the treatment of the fetus, he helped the woman feel a rush of vitality. On the city streets, the girl arranged improvised speeches, competing with difficulties for her mother's health because the medicine costs. The hero, who thought well in treatment, decided to reach out of help. He himself initiated the potion, and not only quickly brought relief, but also surprised his unique taste. During the rest hours, the path to the blacksmith's guild became a favorite for Elfin. Its appearance every time caused a real charm. The masters did not hide the surprise, seeing such an experienced elf among their ranks. The Kenna blade was coping with special scattering, as if weapons were created for himself. With every work completed, the master gradually began to take up new, interesting orders. The awareness of the importance of new acquaintances came instantly. They could later open the door to new opportunities. On the way back to Dojo, talking with random passers-by. The rumors were vinally spreading. They say, the elf became a student of the school of Asgi River. Such news, like bright light in the middle of the night, quickly had to attract those who were annoyed even by the very idea of reviving the fourth discipline. Each new threat to these two threatens all his workout. Responsibilities or personal choice, decisions were made instantly, from the heart. However, now the invaluable time to master the magical arts slipped out, and the teaching of the sorcery will have to be moved for many years forward. Fate tossed Kray's response to his letter. He expected such news. In order to avoid excessive attention from the students of Lorland, Kreia thought a clever plan. He appealed to the former member of the Star Seven, asking for a little to scare interesting young people. He was answered to this request by his friendly consent. Kreia insisted that all the cases concerning the Lordran school were under his care. He expressed his desire to receive any news about events, even before the walls of the school can be in danger. The message said, "The letter is already going on the road, and soon the author will appear in Warfula personally. That's when he will be able to discuss everything and arrange a meeting." Ace remained confused. He did not realize who he was accepted for, but decided not to go too far and guess. For the first time, a dispute with the students of the Asagi school broke out at the beginning of Isa's journey when he studied in the walls of Lauderd. In the imagination, the reactions of Kin and her mother to the unexpected appearance of the Chios were emerging, and the thoughts of Isa were increasingly immersed in reflection on the complex world of human relations. The fragility was intertwined with the complexity of their relationship. Guy was clearly aware of the reason why the elves choose loneliness, and not without self. Irony noticed his own excessive persistence. In the heart of Kira, a thirst for human warmth was glowing, because no joy was compared to him with a gentle Aquina smile. Finally, the long-awaited moment came. The workouts began, but they were surprisingly easy. The honing of the blows became the meaning of training, and the guy relentlessly copied every gesture that showed Ken. There was no experience in teaching others, so intuition prompted this path. Usually, such subtleties are left out of the attention of newcomers, and for her made an exception. This test seemed to turn to him into a real smithy, where not only metal but also character was hardened. Step by step, as if having an eternity in stock, skillfully introduced changes in a variety of corners. 6 months of difficult training remained behind as suddenly mysterious crews appeared in the camp. Before getting acquainted with Dotsio, the guy's teaching took place in the walls of the Lauderdy school, where he carefully followed every word of Kina. Under the careful care of the mentor, the guy chose a place behind his back, trying to go unnoticed. Finally, the moment came. Kreia appeared to everyone as a real desperate adventure seeker. The sincere bow and apologies for the behavior of their comrades so moved the girls that they forgot all the images for a moment. The words of the hero sounded unprecedented sincerely, and his respectful attitude instantly dispelled the tension. At the edge they noticed a desperate warrior, so they invited the knight in a cozy guest room. The hostess perceived this proposal with a special admiration, and Kin did not refrain from asking. She wanted to hear the story of fencing. One day, having become determined, the girl turned to Sur the country. In her heart, an important question was mature. The outbreak of adventure excitement forced her to call the guy for a duel, and the young man readily accepted the proposal without hesitation. In the end, it became obvious that Ken had no chance to resist him and had to admit her defeat. This discovery hurt her mother, immersing that deep sadness. Ownership of the sword always seemed to the edges of its weak place, and the collision with the real world opened to her strict trials and brought invaluable experience. Things that were rich, strangely, were unnecessary to others. There was nothing extraordinary in his efforts, just a calm, stubborn gait to the desired. The skill of the Sword of Kin seemed to him as imperfect as his own. An unexpected proposal came, to spend several years in fascinating journeys, opening new horizons together. I said confidently, "The most powerful man of all who had to meet will remain near the end," and with a light smile touched her eyes. In the midst of training, the girl's attention was attracted by his unchanging support. Every time he was nearby, ready to help and do something pleasant without hesitation. Mother's tears remained an invisible wound on her heart. But if the forgiveness touched the soul, she would not hesitate to turn to him again, to ask for help in the path of searching, which leads to an unknown life of adventure finders. With sincere hope in her voice, the girl asked him to watch her mother until she was forced to be aside. The world of swords does not have a steady road and opens its path to everyone separately. This truth suddenly illuminated the hero. However, he invented 2 conditions for her. The first was the desire to create a special armor with your own hands to give it before leaving it. She struck the headquarters in the house on the Ear Court. It was there that he had to be based. Ken has been delighted, first learning that the hero has his own home. The awareness of this came unexpectedly quickly, and in his eyes she looked like a simple and somewhat trusting girl. The Kina's house became a real fortress for her. Familiar, always ready to put a shoulder, a wise priestess from the Church of Newscord, and an experienced fencing mentor from the Guild of Adventures. Inside, there was hope that, getting involved in a new everyday life, the girl would not leave the workout and harden the spirit. Sometimes they wondered whether the arena resonates with her feelings. She fastened a promise with a warm shrub. She will certainly become a skeleton that will continue her teacher's business. An easy request to wait for his mouth, and Isa gladly accepted this idea. Left alone after the movie leaving, the hero enthusiastically took up the renewal of Dozo, turning him into a place of new opportunities. The walls were filled with a deaf echo of the master's movements, because day after day he did not leave the training, grinding each technique for perfection in silence and concentration. Always holding on to Kin's mother, he tirelessly tried to protect her from all troubles. Along with Gio, he built a smithy, where he skillfully owned the fire and metal. The cinema left these places when Dozio was just starting to demolish, so she never learned what it would look recovered. Since the beginning of study, the boy's blacksmith skills have grown to unprecedented level. Inspired by his own achievements, asked for permission to speak at the competition and to present his creations by the king himself. Last year, he took the 3rd stage, and now he rose even higher. He found himself second, giving way to only cunning dwarves. It is this rapid upswing that has probably caused the constant oppression by the nobility and stubborn rags. Invitations to banquets, offers to make swords or visit luxury estates. All this disappeared when the noble persons realized that his stubbornness was not even equal to the gnome. Since then, the aristocracy has no longer worried the master. The gratitude was filled with Isaha. He is the glory of gratitude to his spirits that they so skillfully turned away the uninvited guests. The name of the hero came in the middle of silence when he was called to convey the important news. He was waiting for a letter from the keeper of the key. The intentions ripen. This letter will certainly be read. Imagination stirs the imagination, forcing you to know the content hidden in words as soon as possible. The desire to know is dominated by everything else. The curiosity ignited the fire in me. I wanted to know what this time was written in the letter. The guy expressed his guess. She probably got a raising again. In the first year she was awarded 4 stars, and the next one had shot 5. For a lonely traveler, her ups seemed extremely steep. Thoughts twisted in their heads. Did she not overwhelm in his work in a few days? The point of view of the edge is not avoided. It wary watches every step. However, the adventures of the past days have not been in vain. The elegance of movements and the sharpness of the mind grew inspired quickly. She had a noticeable jealousy in her soul. The region ahead of me and noticed it first. But her suddenly loud chikik immediately overtook her attention to her. The woman's face was suddenly surprised when her eyes ran a line of letter, and in the meantime, Ace did not take her look with a lively interest. 6 stars were already glowing in her collection, but it was only the beginning of a true story. Assuring that she would soon cross the threshold of her home again, she kissed her mother in the cheek. But she just smiled through tears and slightly waved them from happy eyes. 3 years of loneliness passed before fate gave a chance to meet her again. And it was then that the hero's thoughts flashed the hope of returning the mentor. Waiting for the return of the mentor filled the heart with excitement. Suddenly the call came, cutting through the silence. The message about the dinner waiting on the table was a real desk for a tired guy. From the moment of receiving that letter, their lives turned completely differently. Everything has changed. Waiting for a return to her daughter filled her heart with joy. So the kitchen had a real holiday. A variety of dishes were prepared every day in large portions. Before each meal, the boy sincerely puts his hands to pray. And then with a smile, he wants a woman delicious. Everything on the table disappeared to the last crumb. No piece was left. The boy dreamed of the cinema to return home as soon as possible. This desire not only lived in his heart, but also grunted somewhere in his stomach. He barely had time to enjoy the taste of the rice as the spirit was fascinating at the door. A moment later, a rapid apology came, and the hero rushed to flee. The look stubbornly struck the door as if someone had to appear behind them. A moment passed as a woman with a mysterious smile on her mouth came out on the threshold. Instantly the sword flew towards the hero, but the weapon was already ready. The blow was met on time. In this short moment, the only confidence squeezed all thoughts. 3 years of grueling workouts have not become futile. Even broken in half with one devastating blow, the blade managed to protect its owner. Only 3 years passed. And this plant straightened the petals, exploding the gorgeous color of unprecedented beauty. And the sails were majestic, honoring this miracle of nature. On the threshold, another person suddenly emerged, and, smiling playfully, threw out, "A lot of time has passed since their last meeting." A light smile rode on her face when the arena was embarrassed by her head opposite Ace's gaze. The realization that it was time to turn to him for support ignited a blush on her cheeks and gave rise to an excitement in the soul. The guy's words were prophetic. The time passed, and today she, gathering all the determination, decided to ask for support from her Isa. The edge presented her to the sinner. Exactly he agreed to spend the girl with the right person. At that moment, the careful look of Kina noted that a new dotsio opened in their city. Among the captive elves, and they were a good half of all hostages, a young girl with a plea in her eyes was distinguished. It was her fate that was similar. The Loudrier's nobles arranged a real hunt for elves, throwing them into captivity only to gain glory and have something to sway before others. It was amazed at how an ordinary person was able to so easily conquer elves, creatures that usually choose the lives of mercenaries or prefer to hide in deep, inaccessible forests, far from human eyes. Outside the endless forest sea, Ari Elfia peaceful people, who did not have the desire for wars and battles. It is easy to learn to talk to spirits, but it is much more difficult to use this gift in battle. The very power of weapons to conquer elves people could hardly manage. The noble detachments, along with their own soldiers, attacked the settlements and land of the elves, arranging the robbery raids. Skillfully hidden from prying eyes, these settlements remained invisible to the majority, which had no idea about their presence. The visions of vision and constantly stunned by drugs of the elves became completely disoriented, losing any chance to feel the presence of spirits or ask them for help. Deprived of spirits, elves appealed to humanity with attempts to fill the void in the heart. They were treated as lower creatures, almost equating to animals. But the rebellious luck and the amazing beauty distinguished this people among others. Fictitious passions for slaves always seemed strange to him. But the admiration of the elves was quite clear. These creatures were striking with particular attractiveness and left a sense of true jewelry. The backstage of this case stood the most influential aristocrats, whose hands kept in their power all the Eastern Principality. The royal court, no doubt, was aware of the situation, however, consciously remained aside. Hidden deeply confidence did not leave the girl. To attract such high ranks for which the state keeps afloat is almost impossible. The seizure of elf rabs was increasingly a kind of high-status symbol among the aristocracy. In fact, the legalization of their slavery could have happened at any moment. The simple secret liberation of the elf prisoners was not enough. The fate would remain unchanged. Only the exposure and severe punishment of high-ranking persons who became the culprits of lawlessness, as well as public apologies of the kingdom for the crimes committed, could bring true justice. Aaron's strength and support has become a rescue not only for him, but for many. Over time, the suffering of elves could be erased from human memory. However, in order for the past to be repeated, it was necessary to find a way to save for the entire elven people. He insisted that this pain should be pulled out with the root, so that nothing else will be corrupted by the kingdom's heart. Anger should not be kept in itself. Ice was okay to move the mountains, only to feel relief. Irna promised. On this task she will release the prisoners of prisoners, and if everything succeeds, will try to convince the whole people to leave the forests and retreat to where safety awaits them. In the blessed forests, where nature is uncontrollable with power envelops everything around, the elves found their own home. They leave here. The natural monsters would immediately fill these spaces, spreading not only in the heart of the forest, but also far beyond it. It was this threat that made the elves stay with their native land with special devotion. Guy promised that when the situation becomes hopeless, he would be able to convince them. Aaron, covered with despair, fell to her knees and begged for forgiveness through tears. He asked Irina to lift her head with a light movement, demonstrating a deep understanding of her feelings. Understanding that in the event of developments in the worst side, he will have to say goodbye to life in this country, has emerged in the mind sharp, like a thunder in the clear sky. Truth. The girl was bitterly regretted, because her decision could eventually change the fate of the entire elven people, touching even him. She did not feel guilty, believing that everything happened because of her fault. The request was made to make a pause and to mention, no lesson has been given. In addition, she agreed to accept him as a student, giving him a chance to join her mother's healing. 3 years have left deep gratitude in her heart. The feeling of debt was worried about it, because during this time he failed to respond to him by any thankful. Lowering her head, the girl wept. But the guy with a slight smile hurried to assure the owner. Nothing important happened. The burning mention of your blow is still glowing in his eyes, like a noon sun. It was this moment that has become a new signpost for him, which will now seek to approach. Oro asked Isa not to deny her efforts so that she did not say that she had not taught him anything, or did nothing good for him. Ice felt clearly. In fact, Oro was much more for him than he has ever. The stubborn thirst for more did not leave her. Too little was said and made. In his dreams, he saw her steadily stepping on, leaving behind a mentor and passing this art to future students, or possibly her own child. Even if for many years, even her figure will only be a mention. The sword should remain alive, and he will continue to study with who will ever receive this inheritance. With the inclined head of the arena, he still silently remained opposite, without shifting. First of all, sincere apologies were not only apologized to his direction, but also at the end of the kin. However, the real meaning of the concept for Kaina remained a secret. The heroine's hand was firmly compressed in a sincere promise to lift the sword even higher to pass it on to the one who came. With a slight smile, the girl reminded she was still his mentor, so she begged to return to her while her heart was beating. Slide her hand and give a sincere smile. Before his eyes, she appeared, the wind of determination in her eyes, a slight glare of the flame on her blade. The words she said for a long time, she was echoed deeply in her soul, leaving a trace of burning emotions. The young man's gaze met with the girl's smile, and at that moment a feeling of true happiness was overwhelmed by his heart. Eastern Ludria once hid in the depths of its luxurious forests, the ancient elven settlement, lost among the possessions of the Marquis. However, the tranquility of this place was immediately destroyed. The detachments of the Marquisa soldiers wiped the village from the face of the earth. They spent 6 months on careful preparation. It was painful to realize that the elves were forced to remain slaves for so much time. However, otherwise it is impossible to act. Only the simultaneous liberation of each could hide the traces that would otherwise ruthlessly erased. Having realized the extent of the elven emigration, and starting the search for all enslaved, the characters understood that no step could be inadvertent. Every detail of the future plan should be considered the smallest detail. The arrow was in the trunk of the nearest tree. Reflections did not rest in the head once after the possible ways of approaching the possessions of the aristocrats. A moment of hesitation, and the thought of calling the aid of the water spirit has already faded, but this idea quickly faded. The power of the element would bring excessive devastation, and hardly be a salvation in this situation. The thought of calling for the help of the spirits of fire and wind and unfolding the hellish tornado in the heart of the aristocratic possessions settled in his head. However, the brutal element would take many innocent lives, and the desired victory would not bring. In addition, such a desperate step would only ignite an unprecedented confrontation between the human world and the elven clans. A fervent desire to give a spectacle the true greatness did not leave the hero, although in the soul the desire to avoid unnecessary destruction. Calling for the help of the ancient guards who have been taking care of the well-being of the earth for centuries, he humbly turned to their power, dissolving in a bright, incredible radiance. All attention was narrowed to one thought. What is the eastern estate of the nobility? Before the inner vision, the earth was barely noticeably shuddered. First, she walked gently, and then easily protected to the side, wrapping the space around a deaf, deep roar. Once upon a time, such underground shocks could not scare the experienced hero. However, for beginners, this phenomenon has rotated a real disaster. While knowing it is safe, the simple people, sincere and defenseless, will feel the consequences of the element. It is not excluded that the fear of the crowd will soon give way to a passionate rage, anger aimed at the cream of society that caused the tragedy, and to the state that closed his eyes to crimes. However, whatever the further development of events, the eyes are behind this insidious thought. The momentum was distinguished by a powerful call. As soon as the signal came, the elves' travelers rushed to save the captive brothers. The rescue immediately followed a large-scale evacuation. About 8,000 soldiers hurried to retreat with a single wave. Impaired thickets will turn into a shelter for the whole hordes of the monster, and the authorities will probably have to publicly apologize to the people. The story remembers these apologies as a promise. Such a tragedy will never happen again. All key negotiations had to go through this woman, the most respected among adventurers, a person who was even feared. However, the alarm did not release. In the event that children were rescued among the rescued elves, the threat of a new disaster remained inevitably close. Mixed roots did not allow these elves to find common ground with spirits, and their life roads and growth were distinguished from the usual elves. They were accused of misfortunes, believing the culprits of trouble, because they were born. They immediately returned to the ground. He tried to prove the absurdity of this custom with all his nature, but the sense of effort remained. It is unlikely that anyone would listen to him. In my thoughts, one simple idea was anxious. Maybe it's time to take up the fate of half-lifts. In any case, it was no longer possible to stay in this country. Instead of the desired acquisition of magical knowledge, only a bitter sense of unfulfilled hopes left the local life. The palms pulled the warmth in the palms, and the opinions of the heads rushed in search of a new path. The gaze fell on a blade that flashed dimly at dusk, and its icy light gradually pacified a storm in the mind. Everything that managed to take out of Lucium was placed in a brief framing of memories. The choice of choice was significant, though not devoid of advantages. For a moment, all the worries retreated, and the blade slowly described the arc in a thoughtful air. Meeting with the sea for the first time caused a storm of admiration in the hero. The heart jumped out of the breast, and the body involuntarily flew up from genuine joy. The kingdom of Ludria covered the earth until the very boundaries of the position, and then fell south, where its territories were faced with the Republic of the Vlastok, which was conveniently spread along the coastal line. The expanses of this country are known to Distant Harbor because its maritime trade is thriving, bringing glory and wealth. The state is skillfully managed by the elected parliament, and it belongs only to the descendants of ancient families. On the borderlands of this country, conflicts with Pavology, which dreams of access to the maritime spaces, have repeatedly flashed. Meanwhile, Ludria, constantly sending a provision for the support of Paralogy, also soon found themselves on the list of those with whom the Willsticks intensified the relationship. Under the scorching sun, when the heat became almost unbearable, it was heard that Laudria was called much richer than Pavology. It was incomprehensible for Ludwig that in the world, someone was forced to overcome the remarkable trials only for a sip of clean water. Happiness smiled at a young girl who treated him with water, and to her community. So he paid a small promise given to kindness. The road to the village has become a number of difficult trials and exciting adventures for the hero. The inhabitants, fascinated by his history, sought to reveal more. What name the uninvited guest carries, how many years he lived, from which the lands of his fate brought from, which he found himself here, and how he planned to stay among them for a long time. Aias and Brudria are always pursuing a variety of adventures. His dream is to find a cozy corner for a peaceful life and to discover something unknown. While in search of delicious adventures, the traveler could not miss the opportunity to enjoy local seafood. So, turning to the guards, he asked where the best restaurant is hiding, which impresses hospitality and dishes from the sea. The man heard a clear assurance there were no spies among them. The bright appearance of the guy excluded even the slightest hint of tracking. The doubts were dispelled, and the conversation went again in the usual bed. With a sincere remorse in the heart, the hero apologized to Elf Senda. Due to misunderstanding with the North, there were difficulties. So the need to check the location of each inhabitant has become a strict daily reality for them. The city of Sarat opened the doors of countless flavors in front of him. Appetizing scents were blowing through the streets, and each passerby could tell you where to find the best dishes. Local tips enhanced the desire to try everything around. The purpose was to find a bar where sailors gather and serve the newly caught fish. Finally, walking through the streets, managed to get to the dreamy institution, just as it seemed. Inside the room met a wave of noise. Visitors were vividly discussing something with each other. I apologized to the lips, politely asked to sit in a free place. At the moment when his gaze met with her eyes, a sincere surprise and joy broke out on his face. The appearance of the elf in the tavern was considered a real event, so the girl with an unconcealed admiration congratulated the unusual guest and invited to join the company. The flash of curiosity shone on the boy's eyes when he ordered the best cheese and fried fish, adding 6 more large toasted shellfish on his list. In conclusion, he chose a drink that perfectly complemented his festive meal. A light smile decorated the girl's face when she noticed that the order turned out to be a lot. Such an appetite from the hero was not expected. Going to the next client, she joked witty. If he needed something, let him not put off and say it directly. The answer was a sincere smile. A man thought noted that this charming girl was not at all confused. She is not lacking in any confidence in any society. After a brief apologies for the delay, the waitress carefully put aromatic dishes on the table, a delicious salad with a delicate pink fish, generously sprinkled with truffle oil, next to which 6 mollusks tasted to the crusty. The aromatic dish caused the hero unrestrained appetite, so at first, the hand reached for fried shellfish. Only by trying them, the sharp rush of pleasure pierced the whole body. The elf's ears were involuntarily shuddered. The taste of the dish exceeded all expectations. A sip of the drink only emphasized this pleasure, making each piece even brighter and more enjoyable. The gaze slid to the waitress, and in response she shone his sincere, friendly smile. The cheerful exchange of views lasted until the waitress confidently lifted a fragrant fish dish for the hero. An unexpected room was shaken by a sharp roar and a hole, where the alarm of those present responded through swearing and cries. The atmosphere on the verge of breakdown. A short patience melted, and an angry man ramped his fist, forcefully struck into the face of the interlocutor. The victim was sharply rejected. He flew into the waitress, drawing it into an unpredictable mess. At the last moment, the guy rushed forward and cleverly supported the girl without letting her fall. Instead, his portion of fish with a plate was on the floor. The waitress, along with Isa, was stuck, watching how the flavors flew. Small smile rode on the face of the attacker when he swayed. They say, with such types you will not talk otherwise. Only fists. He was overwhelmed by his pride for his own act. Angry to the limit, he was accused of killing his fish without holding back indignation. The order made clear. The abuser immediately embarrassed the slap and make the girl sincerely ask. In vain he tried to understand what he was accused of. The hero, meanwhile, severely forced him to apologize to the defenseless fish. However, instead of reconciliation between them, the conflict broke out. At once, they rushed into the fight, and witnesses of events desperately tried to disrupt the crash and persuaded them to be able to. The uninvited eye of the chef fell on 2 young men standing around, hotly seizing forgiveness. In a cheerful trying to support the elf lord, who stood by her side, Karina suddenly heard the strict order of the cook, to remain silent. The same young man who had just led a fierce clash with the elf was reproaching towards the cook. It was your appearance that spoiled my mood, so all the fault lies on you. Grant convinced everyone that Driss was a source of all their troubles. His indignation was already threatened with an open conflict with the culprit, and thoughts of future problems were not rest. Hardly holding himself from interfering with the situation, he clenched his fists, holding back the desire to make Driss finally see. Hardly holding back tears, he pleaded, assuring that it was only the first steps of a great fiction. He said that on the table instead of food, only a bunch of unnecessary. The forced apologies tore from the hero's mouth, because suddenly it came to him. It was worth fighting for delicious food, and there was no reason to be angry with the opponent. The smile illuminated his face. It seems that mutual understanding has come. But despite this, the spoiled lunch did not cost deserved reproaches. Draft, jokingly lifting his eyebrows, asked if the hero was planning to stay for a long time, and promised to catch fresh fish for him. The joy of reconciliation illuminated the Granto face, but he still advised to pay attention to the mess around. The gaze stopped on the cracked chairs. It was their Grant who asked to show. Having indicated the damage caused, he suggested a simple decision. If everything is compensated, the conflict can be considered exhausted. The chef Castle jokingly suggested that it is only necessary to catch the fish. He will instantly prepare something delicious from it. A happy event immediately pushed Issa with 3 bright figures of the city, an indomitable waitress of Karina, an avid fisherman with a slice, and a colorful tavern owner with a Grant. Their sincerity and energy inadvertently reminded him of the mentor gnome, so the newly arrived guest almost immediately became part of the life center of the town. The anxiety still sharpened Issa's soul, not letting you forget about the stranger whom it brutally beat Driss. The arrogance of this type did not know the boundaries. He hesitated the host dish right in the middle of the bold. But the most amazing, the daring in character, the man suddenly broke and disappeared. In his reflections on this, the guy put a cold compress to the bruising, breathing a sigh of acute pain, and carefully sank on the bench. Removing the towel from the wounded hand, the following glance stopped on bleeding cuts. Meanwhile, the slice finally acknowledged his real place among the employees of the trading company. The awareness of the danger made the hero to act carefully. A few more such wounds. Both the blacksmith's craft and combat skills will be at risk. Such a course of events would not only harm Oswald, but also Kia. Both of them would suffer from such injustice. Probably, at this moment, a harsh dwarfish mentor would already complain about his lack of diligence. Teacher's images came out in memory as the hero got in bed and firmly decided, "Tomorrow, I will certainly wake up early." That morning, the hurry drove the hero forward and thoughts turned to the Drist. Let him rest for breakfast. Running to the pier, he suddenly saw a noisy crowd that surrounded something amazing ring with a dense ring. The views of the attendees stopped at Nakabi, who was in a hurry to hide from the scene. The stringent demands were heard from all sides. It is inappropriate to appear here, so let it get away. The excitement of friends forced the hero to ask Rista whether nothing was wrong. He remembered the advice received the day before, and already wanted to take advantage of it when a heavy hand was suddenly on his shoulder. A stranger appeared behind and severely cut off the conversation, saying the elf that he was not his business. Suddenly in the back of the hero crashed a powerful water jet, sharply forcing him to jump back. The request was not approached, because he was coordinated to communicate with Grizz. At the same time, a strict warning was made. If someone dared to touch, the consequences will be much worse. In the mind of Issa, the thought flashed. The local spirits of the sea were much more warlike than those that he had to deal with before. Even the words did not have time to say, so he decided to annoy them with frequent messages. The Drift, covered by the rage, exclaimed the accusations, convincing that they were guilty of all his troubles and ignited this conflict. It was impossible to understand how these scoundrels dared to challenge him. Drift, along with Issa, looked at the guy who laid responsibility for them for all his own misfortunes. Trying to summon the Riza to a conflict, he cunningly pushed the situation to the border and immediately announced to prevent them that it was his own decision. Hunger tormented so much that there was no strength or desire for such occasions. The light movement managed to evade the enemy's impact. Recently, not one brave man dared to grab them, but only one stroke of the hands of the spirits called the hero immediately washed the attackers into the water. The surprise played in the gaze of Grizz when he realized the true power of ice. If this is true, the mystery is just deepening. Why did the young man be beatings yesterday, although he could effortlessly give a decent repent, just want to desire it? The guy's words were strongly heard. In a duel, he was able to compete without the support of spirits. The player's focus was emphasized by the confidence that the dread would not throw his comrades at a lonely battle. A light smile blossomed on the Drisa's face. The young man who was staying aside, he felt as much as he could surprise the interlocutor, and immediately suggested that the business proceed. At the same time, a genuine willingness to listen carefully in the voice sounded in the voice. Perhaps the marine deity was known for its variability. But Issa did not hesitate for a minute. determination to help heal in his gaze. Finally, the results became noticeable. The fascinated views of the guests were chained to a young man who tried marine delicacies. Each dish surprised with exquisite tenderness, and the drink conquered a unique bouquet of tastes. In addition, it was possible to catch and cook a real octopus. The tavern owner thought, it is worth experimenting. From a fresh octopus and squid, you can create many unusual dishes. Having learned in the market about all the intricacies of local life, Iso quickly joined the course of affairs. It turned out that merchants were constantly arriving at the town on giant ships, while modest fishermen went to the sea at their little bars. Disputes for the right to use the harbor broke out between them almost daily, filling the embankment with sharp words and tension. Among the many patrons of merchants, noble families of the city played a special role. A striking example was Pacelli's family, who had the ancient glory of skilled fishermen and nourished the city with generous catches from depth for decades. The powerful family of Tritron managed many trading enterprises, among which was the company Lorette. Their ambitions had no limits. The clan representatives persistently expanded their own trade network in the region, trying to cover new sections for sale. Having united for a common goal, two families were interested in turning the town into a flowering place. Thanks to their cohesiveness, new residents began to come here, who bought local goods and products in love. Each of the goods sold has brought additional profit to the fishermen, and its abundance grew. Between them, tensions and disputes were gradually rising. Deep-sea merchant ships increasingly needed a spacious and deeper harbor. To increase the number of fishing boats, there was a lack of space. There was a question of expanding the port. Small fishermen boats easily stopped right off the shore, but the rapid growth of sails required even larger areas, and the new harbor should be quite near the beach. The feeling of uncertainty did not leave Broden. Whether it is a daily misery of all towns by the sea, or only here such a question broke out a fierce dispute. At this point, the chef, full of inspiration, raised another culinary experiment, a new dish that immediately invited to tasting. A slice appeared in the taverna door, happily saying that he had caught the octopus again. Young fishermen looked at him as their undeniable authority. Loretta intended to ridicule the fisherman just before everyone, hoping to publicly despise him. However, the idea turned out to be a real challenge. Driss believed that the boy had already coped with octopus, but the hero explained, it was only a competition for the tear of the tentacles. The complexity of the situation arose because even the most violent images did not give reason to call someone hopelessly cruel. The slice, meanwhile, pleased himself with the thought. Perhaps the hero enjoying the taste of the boiled octopus. The closely woven relationships between the Germans and merchants could not save the situation. The understanding was not possible. The letter of apology and promise of a personal meeting the next day was received by the hero on the 4th day of stay in the city. Local people said that this man is a master of deception, capable of any meanness for the sake of benefit. Not trusting him, the hero did not even open a message. The coast met the guest with an unexpected ambush. A group of local guys with sharp blades immediately surrounded him. For a moment, there was a look that there may be sympathy among the attackers, but none decided to show him. Issa appealed to the ancient forces of the earth, and in a moment the sandy wave of languages woven the attackers. Surprised guys froze, deprived of even moving, not understanding what unknown power they were shining. Fate released me only a moment, and in this short time I turned all his swords into debris. The horror was roaring the group, and everyone was in a hurry to run where. At this point, Ice turned to the powerful spirits of the earth, begging to fulfill another desire for him. The panic swept the crowd. People rushed, but the sand of a living trap absorbed anyone who tried to escape. The hero with a satisfied smile watched this spectacle. 10 souls were waiting for liberation, but it is unlikely that a crowd of rescuers for one such business should be erected. The soldiers understood the truth. It was the Loretts who chased the fishermen, mocking them for their own fun. Moreover, these scoundrels were not limited to bullying. They were also cheating on others for the benefit. For all the crimes of the winner, it was necessary to keep the answer. After an unsuccessful attempt of the trading company to deal with the traveler, the latter turned into a formidable danger even to the influential Tretron family. Despite the fact that there were still many unresolved hassles in the town, stroll through its narrow streets, the hero suddenly came across a little geekon, who lay helplessly on the road. Without thinking, he carefully picked up the animal, deciding to take care of it, and take it to where he would not threaten anything. In families, men could argue openly without holding back their emotions. The debate between different points of view helped to discharge the situation before the quarrel could develop into a serious conflict. The world around remained unchanged, as if someone had flipped through the long-written script pages. Inside, Isa has a mature, anxious feeling. His actions are guided, and there is no true choice. The moon of carefree life in the tavern grants flashed in spraying dishes and drinks until the variety of marine delicacies finally got. The penultimate evening of his stay was marked by the appearance on the table of salty dried snacks of Titus meat. Obviously, the dish fascinated the hero. From now on, the order of this snack has been increasingly heard, and the octopus has barely enough to everyone. In the tavern, a relentless hum was spreading, and Karina has noticed enthusiastically that there were never so many visitors here. She gave the right advice to invite new employees to the team, thinking that this would allow Gran to expand the menu without interruption and attract even more visitors to the institution. The hero was constantly seen in business, and the young man, announcing his quick departure, promised to greatly facilitate her everyday care. In the walls of this city, the invisible attention was pursued by the hero at every turn. The raw breath of suspicion did not leave even after resolving the case with Loretto, so it was clear that two influential families did not retreat and continued to be kept under supervision. However, Karen stood for all these shadows. Its extensive network of informants enveloped the city, as if a web without losing any movement of the hero. The unknown prevailed about the Grant's actions, but the confidence in Karini was unwavering. She would cope with Laura without unnecessary hesitation. A warm smile illuminated her face when she reached out to the young man. The opportunity to share food, and indeed had another advantage, so at least there will be no extra darkness with cleaning. The idea of Karen, which seemed light and casual, proved to be surprisingly accurate. Everyone has admitted unanimously. They are now feeling the lack of their presence. In response, the hero promised to visit them as soon as the opportunity. The next morning, the hero had to go northeast, in the mysterious lands of magic. The girl immediately guessed that it was a small kingdom in the east, and the hero confirmed her assumption. On farewell, she waved warmly with her hand, promising that their meeting is sure to happen. And finally, with a humor spark, she advised to bring a grocery store for new adventures next time. Farewell smiles illuminated their faces. Their palms met in a friendly splash. It seemed that the city was able to find a balance between constant and continuous growth. At least now. Loneliness suggested that I want to be sad here. The country of magic has become a cherished purpose for the main character. It is a small but important state that is part of the Great Eastern United Union. In ancient times, the Endless Land belonged to the Azoid Empire, which later broke up into many individual countries and proud cities of states. The reason was the disputes over the heritage that divided these lands and forced people to exist among the ruins of the former grandeur. Subsequently, the people decided to determine their fate on their own. But the city-states remained unhappy, and there were constantly confrontation between them. Like many small rulers, these countries have been able to avoid the threats of absorption by stronger enemies. Meanwhile, the Alliance A consolidated its forces, so as not to be influential to influencing domestic policy. In addition to the alliance, there were also other conditions, mainly related to the Earth of Magic. Traveling through the gorgeous apple gardens, the hero decided to stop under their cozy tent of green leaves. Once the local lands were chosen to create a school where the secrets of magic were revealed by the most fertilized, forming outstanding sorcerers, capable of changing the course of battles on their own. The basis of this institution is absolute independence. No city of the country can subordinate this stronghold of knowledge. To learn witchcraft, that's what the soul of the hero was passionate about. And it was the Earth of Magic that hid the most experienced masters of this case. Only here was the real prospect of mastering the art of true magic for him. Even without meeting anyone, a prominent, unusual journey by the edge is still able to muffle the thirst for new experiences. The trail was stepped by Lisa when an ancient visa. The carrier, honored with a gray man, slowed the horses and offered to throw a traveler. But the girl only smiled warmly, politely thanked, and refused. Travel on foot always seemed much more attractive to her. He gazed in the trail, mentally noted that even in the cart he would not have escaped, as if he would be threatened with a seashore. From the airsheet sent by Sorit, it became known that their path leads to this place. If the fate threw it somewhere near Odin, there was no doubt. Sooner or later, it will certainly make itself known. However, unlike experienced once, there was no confidence now. Whether the letter was in the hands of the addressee, it remained a mystery. There were doubts in the head. Suddenly, the shake on the ship will collect from his feet and will not rest. The boat journey promised to add another bright page to his already rich adventure experience. Noticing the pointer on the road, the Eisent willingly decided that for the first opportunity, he would ask Driss to take him on a trip to Sora. A little time passed, and the guy was on the streets of Jampaman. A cruiser, similar to a sunken Titanic, silently opens the waves of the Golden Ocean. But in fact, it is only a bright image, a born imagination of one of the local poets. The words were heard like a mighty call. An unknown energy has even fallen into the breast of the hero. Having mastered himself, the hero chose an unexpected way. He used the blacksmith's license to overcome the isle. It had no intentions to stay here for a long time, but the desire to return to the blacksmith's work burned inside. Stusen of Time removed him from the usual craft, and the memories of his favorite business were called with renewed vigor. Hiding behind the anonymity mask and gaining authority on these lands, she would have the opportunity to reduce attention from guard. At the entrance before the arrival, a smiling girl was waiting for him, whose voice sounded especially warm. Wishing a nice evening, she was gently wondered what business brought him to these places. Looking for a cozy shelter at night, he did not forget about a delicious dinner too. The stomach was already reminiscent of himself. After informing her mother about the night visitor, the girl quickly voiced the prices. A separate room, 50 copper, dinner costs 12, and breakfast, 8. She asked the name of a stranger with an interested look. Opening his face, the guy forced the girl to be numb by surprise. Mr. Ice's hand showed his hands on his room, invited to leave his suitcase and join the dinner below. Carefully voiced the price. Bathing in the laundry will cost everyone 5 coins. To the elf room, the girl spent a light gait, holding back the excitement. Only for a moment did she look at Ice, met with his clear eyes, embarrassed with a wave, and the cheeks remained pink. The inconvenience of her but overcame shame. The girl still dared to ask whether the hero was really the elves. A sudden wave of panic swept the girl, and she whispered in a hurry for her curiosity, acknowledging that he should not torment the guests with such questions. Unexpectedly for herself, felt a light, gentle touch. The hero gently ran his hand on her head. A wide smile became a response to the truth of the girl. An elf really stood in front of her. Probably, for the first time, life brought her with the creature of this people, because a genuine passion broke out in the look. She told how she happened to meet the elves on the road when they passed past their settlement, but none of them had never visited her home. The key to unlock the door to his room and remind you to keep it. The room met with unpretentiousness, but the cost of the bed was noticeable at first. Convenience and luxury were combined in every detail. Carefully arranged furniture immediately rushed, and the guy involuntarily ordered that maybe it would be a little longer here. The last word, undoubtedly, remained behind the local cuisine. On the table before the champion was ready the first dish. A girl with a smile served wine, fragrant wheat bread, and a mouth-watering paste with bacon in a gentle white sauce. The taste of this food completely captivated Ice, leaving it in delight. No crumbs were left on the plate. The girl immediately realized how much the young man appealed to her dish. A satisfied smile appeared on his face when he noted the extraordinary taste of the dish. A pleasant surprise filled the soul. The food was much better than it seemed. Without hesitation, he promised himself to stay in this hospitable home for all his stay in the city. It is in the principality that Trevian Hero goes to the guild of Jampam and blacksmith workshops. Having voiced his need, he orders from an experienced blacksmith 10 spear tips, emphasizing the exact terms of execution. For each product offers a decent reward, a shiny silver coin. When the smithy door opened, the master immediately promised that the hero was finding everything he wants. The owner did not hesitate. This is the case that can be entrusted to a person from the outside. A silent understanding broke out in the eyes of the interlocutor. Workers cast surprised views on an unusual guest. Elves rarely stepped the threshold of this smithy. License, published by Humania, is the highest sign of trust in the world, and even it lost its power to local rules. The name of the famous gnome did not cause much admiration. Passing the spear as a sample, the man asked to Oroke exactly the same. Exploring the tip, the group immediately noticed its primitiveness. The task was not easy. 10 such spears needed to be made during the week. At the same time, the number of orders had no upper limits. The decision to improve the design of the spearness to perfection seemed successful. It is unlikely that anyone will actually need protection against such weapons. The order was accepted without hesitation, and the others could not hide their surprise, admiring the elf's blacksmith. Marble announced that there were several final strokes. He was admired around him. Everyone was surprised by his skill and unmatched speed. One of the blacksmiths even noted that the product he created became the best in the sample. The words of sincere gratitude were heard to the assistants, and the hero promised to return the next day to bring the matter to the end. Going, the young man said goodbye to his hand, and the blacksmiths, with his gaze, were genuinely advised to close the road on the way back. The frantic heartbeat was exfoliated in the chest. All this may only be because of curiosity, but the words of the commendable words have been warmed by the soul. The words of the teacher gnome came in memory. He was genuinely surprised why Issa could not give the tip of the proper shape, and did not decide to admit it immediately. Not wanting to distract him from affairs, I decided to stay away. However, the gnome broke out with anger, and quit, that it was pointless to worry about such a meager thing. It seemed that common sense bypassed the acute man's side, so the request to monitor the course of the workout was more than appropriate. The gaze rose to the stars of the sky. A warm smile blossomed on his mouth. The memory of Mr. Dwarf, a native figure that once became a friend and mentor, blossomed on his mouth. For Elf, separation with him still felt as fresh as it was only a moment. The generous subsoil of this land gave extraordinary yield, so the inhabitants of the United Union were alien to the concept of lack. This day, the city was traveling by a guy who lifted a luxurious cake worker. Watching her eyes shone with genuine admiration. Free from working in a tractor, the girl gladly agreed to walk the city. The smile illuminated her face when the guy promised to treat sweets, which was difficult to give up. The abuse has captured it, because in the previous life, similar words to a 10-year-old child would turn into arrest. The smiling Issa was generously invited the girl to eat as much as she wanted. He flew a whole week from his appearance in Jampion, and still cannot do without the prompt of the knowledgeable locality. The girl was strongly recommended to go home before the sunset. She nodded obediently without arguing. At the news cortex, the schedule consisted of 6 busy days of work and 1 day for a break, so special attention was paid to maintaining good physical shape and its own comfort. After passing 32 spears, she learns about the well-deserved weekend that awaits him this day. O'Reilly's view of the spear balance was false. He focused only on the sharp edges, without even realizing other important nuances. However, it would be in vain that a new day promised to put the next test. A handkerchief appeared from the purse of the handbag, which carefully wiped the small nose of the child, gently saying not to bastard or trash anymore. The fertile lands of this country are amazed, but sweets here are a real luxury. For Andal, who never tasted cakes, the delicacy remained an unattainable dream. Hope to try a lot of unknown flavors has warmed the soul of the hero. The charming aromas of dried fruit pie with delicate cream, rosy pancakes, generously washed with butter, and a varied cookie was lured from the counters, promising pleasure in exchange for silver coins. In memory, those days when the diet was monotonous and fresh. And now, tasting every piece, a new force is spilled through the whole body. There is confidence in feeling that the spirit is gaining power. Suddenly the words about the stone titan, which float through the golden sea, broke into memory. Their power brought a crumb relief into the heart, although only a little was added. Here it is, the real essence of human culture, which is revealed in the little things. At the end of the evening, Isa and the girl decided not to pay attention to the strict guidelines of Nuda and ordered a gorgeous huge cake. However, not all of this wealth brought joy. By the case, the hero heard alarming conversations about the offensive of the Dracian army, which has already invaded the north of Zaire, the land of fearless mercenaries, not for nothing called lions. In memory, the mention was still glowing. The Dradians are tireless nomads who were famous for their rapid cavalry. Suddenly, Non drew attention to his alarming look, and gently wondered what had happened. A light smile illuminated his face, and to dispel her anxiety, the guy said that it is not necessary to worry. Generously breaking a piece of cake, he reached out to her. The cheerful scene unfolded when the girl with an unspeakable passion clung to the cake, so enthusiastically shook him that she almost swallowed the fork with the delicacies. Laughter exploded almost by himself, watching her relentless greed. The thought is that if you want to find out all the subtleties, you should leave this question until tomorrow and ask for answers to the representatives of the blacksmith. The Cavalli Guild has notified the joyous news. The meeting of the most outstanding masters from the halls is quite possible. However, there was no full confidence. Blacksmiths knew only one thing. Several northern countries from the Eastern United Alliance were going to support the North Zaire. Washing his sweat with a towel, he detained his gaze somewhere in the distance. In my mind, an alarming suspicion flashed. Her own involvement in the war, it seems, did not enter the plans, but the invisible tension hung in the air. Meanwhile, others could not take their eyes off the elegant sword, created by the hands of ISOs, were sincerely surprised by his skills, and admired the graceful beauty of new weapons enthusiastically. The former miss always imagined his standard, worthy of imitation, and admired its almost perfect nature. After the project with arrow-headed to ISOs, they turned with a difficult challenge. To create the best sword of all possible, allowing any expenses to reveal the full potential of their art. Now it is not important what a sword it is. The hero's vigilant look slid along the blade before he carefully spread him sideways. Among the arsenal, the most trust has been caused by straight swords, light one-handed weapons, familiar with the time of study at Shogi-Ro. While Issa studied the new blade carefully, the impatient voice of one of the blacksmiths came from behind his shoulder. The work was completed. It was desirable to check the power of a new sword. The hero went out into the yard and made some confident, wide strokes. One of the blacksmiths suggested that he try his hand at interest, but his partner only twisted with distrust and barely shook his head. After leaving the room, he noted with surprise how Shiogi-Rai exercises completely direct the mind to the smallest details. In memory, a clear idea of the perfect blade was made, the perfect outline, the exact weight, the flawless balance. With this image, he skillfully struck the sword. Starving searches did not give a hero, and passion was ignited in breasts. The desire to give at least a hint of form seen in the dreams of the image did not leave it for a moment. Clearly realizing this, the hero knew. Only two mentors were able to feel and deeply understand his true essence. The feeling of fullness was already overwhelmed by the soul. It seemed, even excessively. For other weight, he gave only the result of his work. A barely noticeable smile appeared on his face. You do not need to look for answers when he speaks weapons. Now his brainchild was perfect to the last detail. Day by day, the young man tirelessly hardened the blade of his sword near a passionate flame, putting in every blow to the hammer of hope and fierce. The real delight was engulfed by blacksmiths. They were impressed with the skill with which the work was done. It seemed impossible to recreate something like that. Twilight dropped to the city when the exhausted hero, getting to the hotel, fell on the bed, barely hiding fatigue. The exhaustion engulfed it entirely, because for almost 3 weeks of hard work they did not give any rest. Continuous work, no rest. Every day carefully honed the sword, seeking to make it perfect. Labor has not been in vain. 10 gold coins were offered a generous reward. Finally, 3 dreamed recreation days fell out when I just wanted to lie down and forget about all the worries. However, a barely quiet thought of peace managed to arise as a loud knock was suddenly rushed at the door. The voice of the nanny came from the corridor. She politely invited Mr. Isa to eat, even suggested to serve dishes directly to his room. With a smile on his face, the guy accepted her care, because such attention was already a pleasant everyday life for him. In her daily visit, the room was always filled with cool water, freshness, and cleanliness. Isa was waiting for favorite treats and incentive words that gave faith in their own strength and painted the mood with bright colors. The concern was so deeply touched by the soul of the guy that inspired not to lower her hands and stay stronger. Grand of gratitude in the heart, after completing all the cases, AES promised himself to invite the nanny to share his favorite sweets again. The ability to turn to the master's gnomes, according to this sword, has finally disappeared. The powerlessness was shaken by ISO and somewhere deeply settled sadness. Both of these things had much more weight for him than any treasures. At dawn, when the soft light shone the room, the girl was carefully convinced. The hero left nothing, everything is with him. She promised to say goodbye to a warm smile. Their next meeting will certainly take place. A warm smile broke out of his goodbye from his mouth, and his voice was promised to meet again. Her lightness and light boldness were so impressed by the guy that the thought of returning to this hotel was overwhelmed in mind instantly. It became apparent here The nanny has a strong, true character. The days at the hotel have been lasted much longer than they would like. The last 3 days have passed in a carefree vacation, sweet cakes, peaceful hours near the nail. However, it is time to go on. If the arena is in search of again, it is better to meet it alone. The trip between cities demanded 2 to 3 days of walking, and it was long ago to unfold the map. In the heart of Issa, hope greeted that the trail leads to Odin. Despite a very short distance, the road sometimes forced to address the counter-questions about the right direction. The road from one city to another could only take a day if it was not for a trip to a cart, which was guaranteed to bring him a feeling of marine illness. With the first rays of the sun, the young man realized in front of him was Ardno, the legendary region, famous for the whole district with amazing ripe fruits. A few small spirits were fun to dream around the apple, luring Jizu to taste his taste. Sincere gratitude broke out in his heart for such kindness, but from the outside the situation could seem suspicious, as if he secretly appropriated someone else. This idea did not have time to flash how a sudden powerful roar behind his back forced Issa to jump from surprise. The garden was threatened when a giant voracious boar suddenly jumped on it. Without spending time, the gardener sought help to those who are known for his courage and thirst for adventures. The loud shots of the surrounding angry boar, and the animal fell rapidly torn into the hunter. The hooves were hard to go on the ground. Boar rushed with her unbreakable determination directly at the frightened man. The men of the Dodi came in, and the frantic boar, even more fierce than before, rushed into the pursuit and persistently attacked with new force. The silent lightning outbreak, and the bow is already in the hands of the young man. The arrow breaks from the bowstring, bright lightning breaks the air and hit the foot of the angry boar. Vepper, not even noticing the arrows, will then rush to the hero, and in this meant, I will pull the bowstring for the second time and shoot another arrow. The deadly arrow is instantly absorbed in the forehead monster. A sharp, piercing cry breaks out of his mouth. With a groan, the animal collapsed down, and the surrounding people were entangled for the well-being of Adele. One decisive blow to the monster was defeated for the sake of saving a person. The death of the beast would not give anything, so the young man, not wanting to waste his remains, raised his hat from the ground. Men told about their intention to disassemble the carcass and hide the meat in the refrigerator for storage. In addition, I asked where the local watering houses are located. I would be much happy, having received help in carrying the boat. Twilight dropped to the ground, and the man felt the need to thank his savior. He asked him to allow to divide dinner by proposing a share of his supplies. A real gastronomic paradise unfolded on the table. The variety of dishes immediately came into the eye of the mouth, watering boar, which attracted its aroma and appearance. The conductor could not hide the delight of such a treat. Seeing that the meat will not go to the useless, the face of the hero was illuminated and pleasure, and a smile appeared on his lips. Meanwhile, the conductor came closer, wanting to talk about the acquired skin. Once upon a time there was the village of Palner, so suggests an old map. Somewhere between these edges and the Fulka, on the riverbank, Lake Zaire spilled. The whole supply of water was intended for washing, treatment of skins and cleaning. It seems that the hero will have to leave it right here. Although it was possible to work tirelessly on the skin, the case promised to stretch for the whole months. For ISO it seemed like a huge period of time. It was not included in his plans for so long, especially when he remembered the air, the understanding that the delay was unacceptable. It came instantly. All the worries were powerful, and the man reported his tomorrow. Knowing that the news may not seem to be the best for ISO, he still expressed he would not be missing place and time. He can stay here as much as he needs. It is too difficult to forget the moment when Iso saved his life. Gratitude for that had no limits. The admission of the hurry was sincerely sounded, and the owner persistently invited the guest to hold on to at least a day longer. Having made a prudent decision, the guy decided to take a good moment and disappear unnoticed. For goodbye, he gave the owners a sincere gratitude and a warm smile, leaving behind only warm memories of a short meeting. In Palner, the boar skin goes to the hands of a craftsman. Issa, curious, carefully monitored the skilled movements of the artisan, trying to see every detail of the work. Only the time for contemplation was missing. The journey was calling relentlessly. Recalling himself of the find, he promised to pick it up as soon as he was in these parts again. During his journey, the ISO noticed a group of travelers who were located in a circle near a warm bonfire, getting ready to spend the night in the open. That morning, The path of the young man brought the shores of Lake Fleek's ear, and the spectacle stopped his breath. It is not the sea in front of him, but the amazing endless dance that touched the horizon itself, as if there was no land in the world at all. Zaire lands stretched immediately behind Foka, entering the Republic of Zaire. Only Isa came to the fishermen. Those with a smile on his face warned, as soon as the wind is increasing, his hat will fly into the sea. The long journey of a boat from a pebble to Luron lasted from dawn until sunset. Cooperation has become the key to the efficiency of workers. Thanks to such a strategy, angry monsters directed their rage only to the feet of the ship, leaving the rest of the ship invulnerable. This was the whole essence of the plan. Side by side with the company, the hero slid the waves on the boat, while the palms of the satellites tirelessly opened the rhythm on the drum. Such a picture filled the soul with an unusual admiration. Endless spaces outside the window gave the traveling in the van a special lightness, making every minute of the road impressively pleasant. It was believed that Laurent and Foka have a lot in common. These cities, like twins, appeared opposite each other on the opposite shores of the lake, reflecting the features with each other almost mirror. She caught the knight in Laurent, wrapping his hope as soon as possible to go to Odin. But later it seemed that events roll forward at excessive speed. If it were not for the delay in the champion, it would probably be more time to study these mysterious cities. However, the pity in the heart did not settle in the heart. Everything happened as it should be. Smiling lips emphasized the memories of an incredible journey that led him to this moment. The country of magic revealed its mysterious spaces in front of the traveler, and behind the horizon was already looming a dreamy purpose that attracted him forward. The evening city enveloped the shadow when the hero stepped on the threshold of one of the Lorons. The city streets were raging by a human gamam, and among the annoying crowd, the priority was to visit a government agency. Hardly holding back the excitement, the hero sincerely apologized to the young lady for anxiety, which he brought at the late hour. In response, the old woman smiled warmly, assured that he could not cause any worries. The path to magical craft begins with the verification of abilities in a government agency. A light shade of smile appeared on the face of the hero, when it was thought that dawn was still far away. Finally, in the walls of the state institution Odin, the travelers see how the place is filled with a complex game of magic. Inner strength and Manu here was melted into powerful energy with the help of wise technicians and exquisite to get the desired effect. The failed exam would forever close the way to the study of magic in the walls of Odin. Thoughts about the future were not resting. If this time it is not possible to pass the exam, what then? Although this moment has long come, the unbreakable faith in its own strength conducted him through all the difficulties before this moment. Mastering magic required not only a deep stock of mana, but also a special ability to conquer its flow. Suddenly, the girl turned to them, calling 8 from the aces. Among the innumerable miracles of this world, only magic remained for him the only path of comprehending the new. The leader invited the hero to the room where a man with a funny, even slightly bizarre appearance was already waiting for him at the table. The hero approached the stranger again. There was some strange uncertainty in the air, but his uncle's friendly smile dispelled anxiety. He was a gesture invited to sit side by side. Not hiding surprise, the old man acknowledged that the elves never happened to him among the participants in these trials. Therefore, a little aware, sincerely apologized for his embarrassment. The smile broke out on the face of a man when he confessed, "The domes happened to him in this place more than once." Interest flashed in the look of the hero. His eyes studied the interlocutor carefully, and his voice sounded confidently when he asked to explain in more detail what was meant. More than 10 times the dwarves challenged themselves, repeating this test for the sake of dreamy magical equipment. Forbes dreamed of learning to spell to give their works in blacksmithing unusual properties. Isaac, fascinated by this thought, was already drawing a magical sword in the imagination and immediately became interested in the idea of creating such a unique artifact. However, the man reminded that for many years this difficult check was overcome by only 2 people, and it happened for a long time. For success in witchcraft, it was necessary to simply have magical artifacts on hand. The ability to own them is even more valuable. In the end, the true strength of the sorcerer lies in its own talents, and Ias finally realized, to rely only on objects in vain, the skill of the magician becomes crucial. The box opened hospitably, and amazing tools appeared before the eyes of the hero. Each of them was filled with mysterious power, and touching them, his heart stabbed him with delight. He has not yet seen such unusual skill of materials. With a careful movement, taking a piece into each hand, carefully combined their tips with each other. Inspired by an example, the hero repeated the movement, and, to his grip, he saw a soft glow suddenly flashed on the tips of the sticks. The smile shone on his face, because this achievement really seemed wonderful even for him. The admiration of the hero's abilities just had no limits, and the heart trembled with joy. Isa, passionate about what he saw, also caught fire with the desire to get such sticks, and the interlocutor said with a smile that it is unlikely that it would be possible. The intention to learn local magic lit in the hero curiosity, so he asked the man to share his knowledge of all available magical possibilities. The first way led to the Military Academy of Magic, a place where future magicians were taught martial arts. But the door of this institution was opened only for the citizens of the Eastern United Union. The young man quickly realized, this option is not for him, because neither military service nor the obligation to the army was part of his plans. Another alternative was the Academy of Adventure, a place where boys and girls were quenched in the art of battles with monsters and introduced the magical secrets of protection. However, a strict condition, 3 years of compulsory service in favor of the United League after release, did not rest. The feeling of freedom forced the hero to reject this option. The Academy of Fundamentals of Magic seemed to be a promising choice. The name itself promised a deep immersion in the light of magic. However, Isa was very convinced that the environment is not able to satisfy his search and aspirations. The fourth way leads to mastering witchcraft under the supervision of an experienced magician. The capture of the hero. The eyes were burning from passion for magic. But in the meantime, a real magician seemed to sigh in a confusion, as if something stopped him. Magic has lost its former essence, ceased to depend on harmony with the spirit and unification of forces through communication. But it was only necessary to think about teaching some magical arts, as the imagination drew. How unwavering Andy was dispersing from such a long. Before you is a space where magic comes to life and reveals its secrets. If suddenly the road is difficult, turn. You will always find support. By the way, accept sincere congratulations on arriving in the city of Asa. The week passed from that fateful check. Without losing hope, the hero went around many magicians, carefully looking for a teacher who will agree to take him under his wing. Among all the magicians, there was one whose icy dislike felt from the first words every time the request was ruthless. With unbridled enthusiasm, the young man sought to become a student, repeating it more than once. But, looking back at his former mentors, Isa felt, in their souls, there was no shadows of enmity. And yet, he sincerely admitted to himself, fate did not spare him neither the refuses or the bitter manifestations of envy. The motivation was gone, and all efforts were directed to work in the forge. For the last 3 weeks, the hammer bells have passed among the bell. Every day it has been wearing new weapons and strong armor. Obviously, the Master Gon was already in advance felt a similar development. Isa inadvertently remembered working with him when they were forging the future. Memories about the words of the Master come to life in memory. The unmistakable desire to master real blacksmith magic fascinated everyone around. According to the gnome itself, even his ability to find common ground with powerful spirits was already a kind of magic. Constant work with metal retained confidence in its own strength and did not allow to lose skills. Doubts have been given the thoughts. Maybe you just need to clasp your teeth and go to the Academy of Basic Magic. This decision seemed too easy and obvious. Thinking, the hero was distracted only when a stranger who, politely apologizing for an unexpected appeal, has hurried to share the important news about today's delivery. Suddenly behind the interlocutor, a third figure emerged from someone's shadows, and it was her appearance that instantly attracted the attention of Ice, while the men enthusiastically discussed the order of 3 more swords and tips for arrows. The new moon, who was significantly different among those present, studied the elf carefully, focusing on it a shrewd look. Seriously staring at the interlocutor, the young man sought to make sure that he sees the legendary elf blacksmith named Ice. The embarrassed, the hero did not immediately realize the reason for the question, but he later confirmed his identity. He is the Isa in question. Being kneeling in front of the elf, a young man with a soul full of hope begged him to take him to among the students. The surprise for Issa struck acutely like lightning. He just got to leave this place as the guy suddenly clung to his hands and stopped pleading, not allowing you to take the step further. With a fierce determination, rushing to the feet of the hero, the guy firmly proclaimed he would not let him go until he achieved permission to become a student. Under the pressure of the circumstances, Issa eventually agreed to listen to him. Only he would give her peace. At this time, the city was rumored. They say that the restless Issa took a new student under her wing. Wooden boxes became temporary places of recreation for the heroes, where Isaha's excitement gradually subsided. The new acquaintance introduced himself, Kaushman Fiddle, a magician and the owner of his own workshop, despite her young age. Isaha's surprise had no limits, because the guy so young achieved significant achievements. In the head of Issa, it was not necessary why the famous magician decided to suddenly devote himself to the art of blacksmithing. The idea to create a magical sword captured the hero from the first moment, and the desire to make this dream into life broke out with special power. A few years ago, Kaushman gained knowledge under Randall's care, a powerful magician and a fairly rare guest in Odin among the Yards. Own workshop in the city became a real fortress of creativity, where the tools were obediently served to create magical artifacts, and new equipment opened the way with unknown research. Following his example, Kaushman erupted the desire to master magic equipment and to reveal the mysteries of witchcraft. But fate made its adjustments. A few years ago he left the city. In the same period, Rydell was ordered to return to the kingdom of Dorf. Kaushman has confidently mastered the foundation of magical art. Before goodbye, the mentor strictly warned, the further path to growth will open only when he dares to count only on his own forces. Only ordinary tools served as a young man while studying in the world of magical equipment, and now the road has already led him to the title of Manga in Odin. But surprisingly, he did not get any knowledge about the subtleties of the blacksmith. Finally, the realization came to why the search should be directed to this person, although the motive remained a mystery. According to Issa, it is possible to master the blacksmith art anywhere, because the main thing is the desire. However, the whole thing was this. From the moment when the sword of the hero first got into the store, there was no doubt. It is necessary to study only in Issa, no one else. Without doubt of any chance, the young man went to the Cavalli Guild. He is convinced that the city will be visited by the legendary master of the kingdom of dwarfs. Among the smoke and heat of the forge, he raised his questions to the most experienced blacksmiths, seeking to reveal the mystery of the mysterious sword. The masters called the name of the creator without delay. It was the product of the master of the eye. It was difficult to accept that the sword had created an elf hand, but the master from the guild was in a hurry to reassure. Everything happened under close supervision and with the blessing of dwarf. Hearing this news, Kaushman immediately went here. At this point, the hero was concerned about only one thing, as his personal information was in someone else's hands. The feverish despair was swollen. He pleaded and swore he was ready to perform any hero. At heart, Nadia burned. Only Iso would discover his knowledge to him. Inside the hero, the excitement boiled again because of the request to accept him in the students. Despite the stubbornness and the desire to achieve your own, deeply in the soul, a hesitantly desire to retreat. Not even noticing this, he himself embodied the same behavior that he was advised to avoid, and it was worth at least a moment to listen to the reservations. The solution was final. You need to make sure that Kaushman is really capable of everything to achieve his goal. With a sincere smile, the man turned to the guy with an unexpected offer. He was ready to discover the secrets of blacksmith skill if he shares knowledge of magic. After all, Issa always dreamed of outing his own magic sword. The capture overwhelmed the soul, so with unspeakable joy he agreed to this proposal. Meeting with Kaushman, whether a casual joke of fate or someone's insidious pranks, did not rest. The idea that this role got to him was caused by the hero of annoyance and dissatisfaction. Widely opening the door of his own workshop, the owner of a friendly gesture invited the hero to enter the first. Asking for his sudden visit, the guest crossed the threshold of the workshop. At the same moment, he was stunned by the atmosphere. The space was breathing in energy and resembled the forge of artistic weapons, unattainable for others. The Kaushman, with a slight smile, promised to ignite the mountain in a minute. When asked about his desires and dreams, Kaushman just smiled openly and said without hesitation, he was ready to take up anything that would fall into his fate. Thoughts traveled to a familiar ringing hammer on a shabby, to the cherished sound of forging iron, which the soul solely sought so much. Issa did not flash past the attention of Isa, with what warmth of Kaushman treats his gnome character. And even against the background of this friendly, his own devotion burned even more powerful. The idea was born to create a magical sword, but the path began with a modest hardening blade. The hero preferred to first try his hand at ordinary weapons. When Issa Koval and Manga Kaushman met in the forge, their disputes were surprisingly simple. In the game, stone, scissors, paper. The memory of it caused a smile on the boy's face, because his mentor sometimes resolved the question in this way. Both men were dropped on different birds, each of which was looking for their own way to the sky. Joint work opened the way to their dreams and gave the power to evoke an unusual sword. Issa was confident with confidence. As soon as the necessity passes, he gladly recognizes Kaushman as a close friend. The morning began with an unusual magic lesson for boys. The first test was the skill to control the flow of man inside. Kaushman addressed Ice with the task to bring his Manu to the surface without the help of any magical things, slowly directing all the internal energy to the fingertips themselves. The first approach brought an unexpected result. Coachman saw with surprise how the idea was done without any mistake. Ashman did not even suspect what a severe obstacle this mystery was carried for ordinary mortals. But when it came to the elves, all the difficulties seemed to retreat to the side. They did not know the limits. Apparently, he did not think that he was faced with the High Elf. A smile appeared on Kaushman's face. Difficult moments have repeatedly saved this, so it's time to move on to studying new equipment. The words woven into Manu became part of the magical formula. The power of spirit and special patterns of thoughts formed a bridge to a real witchcraft. It is enough to understand how these formulas interact with mania. It is necessary to carefully investigate all the established principles that control its flows and combine them so that the spells can be put into practice. The miracle of magic is the fruit of tireless work and wisdom of many generations of magicians. Before the eyes of the hero, a huge mountain of ancient folios filled with puzzles and mysteries opened, and this landscape caused him a genuine admiration. The real meaning suddenly opened in front of him. For the sorcerer, the way the elves used the strength of the spirits looked far from perfect, even a little unfair. Only now did it come to him that such thoughts had never come to mind. Proc assured that condemning it is like that to consider the ability of birds to wrap the sky or the fiery breathing of dragons something false. The absurdity of the situation was amazed. What a sense to see the envy where it does not exist. The hero tried in vain to attribute to him that feeling. The desire and ability to master magic gave him the same rights as everyone else. The words spoke into the depths of the hero and Isonecton, leaving a deep mark. The excitement fire was in the eyes of Ashman. As soon as they finished lunch, it is time to take forging. No less excitement raised the question. What kind of thing did the hero manage to create with his hand for the first time? The imagination told the hero that it was nail before him, and this assumption sincerely impressed the experienced blacksmith. From that day, both devoted time to the joint knowledge of magical secrets and art of forging, day after day opening new horizons together. During protracted conversations about the best appearance of the legendary sword, fierce disputes were burning, and in a short moment of resting the soul of travelers, the travelers flourished, as if in children. Friendly conversations lasted longer, filling the evenings with a warm atmosphere. Immersed in reading during a short break, the hero flavored a light dish, and the caring Chitinment had already carried him an interesting illustrated fairy tale. Thoughts spoke about how they really remained ordinary guys, no matter what. The boy's lips were blossoming into the fascinated smiles. The very thought of a wonderful, almost mythical weapon fascinated the imagination. Iso believed it fervently. It should be the most pressing thing in the world. However, in his opinion, an additional attraction would be the ability to throw out flames. For a long time, silence and loneliness were its only satellites. However, everything changed when a mysterious parcel with a letter appeared on the threshold. Inside, the hero was waiting for a spooky find. The skin of a guy whose greed became fatal for him. The message came from Aaron, who turned to the mysterious Nobel ice cream. The cold decision of the Humry family became a sentence. Every aristocrat who dared to oppose the elves was waiting for death. At the same time, all these actions were recognized as their own noble initiative, not the official policy of the country. so no public apologies to the elves have never been made. The hero assumed that in a few years the forest Ludria would be a real reflection for many monsters, forced to escape. The sentence was issued. For the elves who left Ludria, the way back remained closed until official apologies were made. However, it will take more than a year to hope for the mercy of the royal family. Glad with anxiety thought that he would have passed for more than a decade before fate gave him a new meeting with a master of the cinema. While these thoughts were raging in his head, Kausman suddenly stretched a cup of fragrant tea, inviting him to get away from the worries. Meanwhile, a sophisticated Elfian, whose hands gently hugged a little human child, responded to the question of I in the hall. The answer to the question of whether the child is able to establish a connection with the spirits is still lost in the darkness of the unknown. The elder wanted to see how Isa would accept the baby under his wing. The idea that the semi-blood elves have only half of life expectancy compared to purebred did not rest. In the usual elves' families, children grow in the eyes of the entire community. A caring environment, unity in education. Asking someone to watch the baby grow older and grow old in the eyes of others, it would seem true. He was the initiator of the ban on the return of the semicircles home, so now he had to take full responsibility for these decisions. The idea of whether the spiritual wisdom and strength of giving this child would be a sincere love, worthy of it, did not give rest. Confidence was clearly missing. In the soul of Isa, a real storm of emotions raged. The shock swept every cell of his nature. In the case of birth of the boy, their days will be filled with adventures. They will catch beetles together and sit quietly with fishing rods over the dance. With the advent of the girl, the heart blossoms with boundless love for her. Children do not need to master the language of spirits to be unique. Naturally, to treat the parents of friends carefully, it is not surprising. Each child is the boundlessness of opportunities, forging, the art of owning a sword, magic, and so many unknown ways. If the baby wants to change the direction one day, there will always be someone who can look with whom in the future the only look. Even if the fate disposes that the child will leave this world before her guardian, the love for her will not go out for a moment. Awareness of how it is called, selfish and self-esteem with sharp, almost fabulous ears, only strengthened the confidence in their own ability to be the best friend and defender for the baby. In the letter he sent Isar, he frankly confesses, he looks forward to the appearance of this child, let this day and not yet close. The first year was held at the Kaushman Society, in common meditations and the search for harmony. Once, delving into the peace of mind, the mind of Isar was illuminated by a sudden, fresh idea. The tools were impressed with their strangeness. To activate their strength, it was necessary to charge them with magic. Products were intended for real magicians who had already mastered the art of witchcraft. Even Fragman emphasized that it was easier and sooner to use ordinary magic. Of course, in the usual circumstances, everything is different, but an unexpected attack changes the rules of the game. In this situation, it is much wiser to trust magical artifacts. The spell that can increase speed would leave Rosian completely unarmed against the enemy. Thanks to a magical artifact that works lightning, the sense of security increases at times. At a critical moment, it is such a thing that can protect against the fatal threat. Magical tools capable of performing only one function became especially simple and easy to use. Their creation for one-time use significantly raised the prestige and the price of such artifacts. He had no idea. However, it is unknown whether the opportunity to use this tool, and whether it will make sense if we decide to act. The idea seemed successful, so the mentor encouraged the hero to try to put him into reality. A short metal wand seemed to be the perfect choice for their end, so the coachman suggested to start with the simplest. Both were buried and full of future accomplishments. In order to achieve maximum efficiency, these people have continuously invested hours in careful research and hard work. The year passed unnoticed, and the learning of magic seemed quite simple. The main thing is to remember as much spell as possible, because all the power of the magician depended only on their number. Classes turned into normal memory training, without any serious trials. The unusual severity of memory was manifested every time the case concerned really interesting for the hero of things. And all the prickly words, at least how many times he was called a fool or worse, they flew past, leaving without a trace. 3 years have passed, saturated with surprises and trials for young men. The Drakshiv army launched a large-scale offensive, breaking through the northern lands of the United Alliance and capturing a large part of Zaire. Desperately in need of help, the Kingdom of North Zaire appealed to the Alliance Exiled, calling for support. A group of students from the Magic Academy arrived in the tragedy. One of the young masters did not forget to grasp his charming staff, and it was because of this ingenuity that many people were able to save. Darkness has not yet had time to settle down, as the camp staggered from the sudden invasion of enemy cavalry. The panic engulfed the student, and gathering the remnants of courage, he also raised a powerful protective barrier. Despite the sudden attack, the sorcerer was miraculously unharmed. But the battle magicians from the army looked noticeably puzzled. Their small security detachment instantly found himself at the center for general attention. Military magicians quickly considered a real pearl in this development and began to use it constantly, whereas all over Odin only Kausman remained the only specialist capable of creating magical artifacts. Kausman went a short message. The author received a few requests to share knowledge of creating magical artifacts, and was sure that the answer would not be delayed. However, unexpectedly for himself, received a refusal. It seemed that it was only necessary to see how the student grows up, and a real magician would grow from him. But Kausman denied sharply. It was only the first illusion. The second mistake was the assumption that he only came for the study of magical artifacts and swords. Issa clearly saw Kausman needs to share his discoveries, to turn science into a new page. Security became a habit for him. None has yet been immersed in the mystery of magical artifacts and their use. The military was forced to hardly demand that he share the fruits of his research. Kausman has frankly confessed to a friend. The issue of copyright or any privileges was not at all disturbed. The hero noted, "It is only necessary to get a rad, and it will immediately be able to start creating a magic sword. In this case, Kausman will be tasked with a spell, and Issa will draw it right on the blade. The more prompt everything is, the closer their triumphal finals." The upset is swollen on his face, but still admits the correctness of the protagonist's words. Promising to cope with everything as soon as possible so that Issa could calmly adjust to the creation of the swords, he sought to win for a friend every extra moment. Meanwhile, Issa was torn from impatience. The restless passion poured into small clashes. The fists lit up in the air. The boys exchanged several encouraging blows. It took 2 years the hero to leave everything behind and take care of the semi-blooded elf. In the heart, confidence was greeted. He and Kausman will certainly convey all the secrets of skill and complement the joint learning. It will only take 2 years, and these boys will leave here with strong swords, created with their own hands and filled magic. Only absolute dedication and complete merger of skills will allow them to overcome this challenge together. First of all, it was necessary to make a prototype. That is why Ice asked Kausman to present the results of her work as soon as possible. Long days and sleepless nights rolled up in hard work. While exhausted to the edge, they no longer had the strength to even get out of the earth. The work did not stop for a moment. The Kausman plunged into worries and books, while the hero honed his sweaty hands with the skill of possession of the sword without sparing strength. 4 years passed, and finally the dreamy goal appeared to the boys as a well-deserved award. Armed with hobbies, the boys admired their work enthusiastically, happily exclaiming that they were able to create a real magic sword. First of all, the team took up the test of the durability of the blade, because the confidence in its reliability was primary. However, most deeply inside the thirst was to check the true magic of this sword. The impatience raged inside, so he asked Coachman to try his magic on this sword. The young man nodded and made my wishes. The sword, illuminated by a magical glow, flashed in front of his eyes, causing the boys a sincere admiration. Finally, the true purpose of this meeting was revealed, and the magic sword gained its completed form. On the face of the hero, a smile played when the thoughts went to the capricious fate, which weaved their paths into a single story. The sword of the sword shaken in the palms of the palms, with the owner whose eyes shone with hot tears, and the heart fought in a frantic rhythm from the storm of feelings. The dream of feeling the weight of this sword and touching his strength glowed in his soul for a long time. But Kausman did not allow him to keep this weapon for a long time. But here is the crucial moment. It is time to take up the creation of your own magic sword. Absorbed by thoughts, days and nights made near the stove, despite fatigue. 5 years have passed. It was now a crucial moment. The martial art exam has opened new challenges. The group wondered with anxiety, is the hero really set up for such a step? The Mag's certificate was already on the horizon, and the young man confidently announced his willingness to take part in the test. In his perseverance and possession of charming swords, Koshman lifted the bar for everyone around. Without receiving official recognition, he would forever block the path to the younger magicians. Odin's main magicians almost fell on his knees, pleading calling the exam. However, neither for Koshman nor for the hero titles and glory had no weight. Having a fiery ball, let the flames of magic absorb the target stone and turn it into ashes. In this world, those who are ready for any tricks to eliminate obstacles always appear. Such was Koshman, until he received the title of official magician. The hero was finally forced to recognize him among the magicians. The heart filled Koshman's sincere gratitude for all help and support. Donated at the right time, the Koshman student confidently overcame the difficult exam in the Lada, and after the test gratefully addressed the exam. The forge atmosphere again wraps around. Koshman asks with interest in Isa how his adventure went. A smile blossoms on the face when she admits, from now on, not only the elfish blacksmith, but also a mysterious magician named Isa is caught up. Koshman warmly welcomes the hero without hiding gratitude for sincere support. Awareness of the task broke out in the hero's thoughts. It is time to go in search of a semi-blooded child. Only a short, decisive nod, Isa confirmed his assumption. 5 years of persistent training in magical arts have passed, and the long-awaited magic sword was finally ready. The moment came when the paths of the hero and Koshman had to disperse. For many days, they honed the skill, creating their own unique blades. With unconcealed frankness, the protagonist noted that children have never caused him special feelings. However, the true curiosity in it is awakened by the idea. What will the baby, who will be educated under their careful supervision? The satellites noticed that the children seemed to Koshman too much, and the old man agreed with it without any objections. Ace, with genuine curiosity, wondered whether the time would come when Koshman would share his experience and skill with someone else. The past 5 years have passed without any hint of passion or romantic feelings on his part. He devoted all his inspiration and energy to science. Among all the students, one hero has endured this path with him. He made his decision for a long time. Even if the knowledge disappears, personally acquired skills and experience will remain forever. This awareness was of particular value to him, a mysterious and exciting delight. The hero has not yet guessed how unusual it was. The vicious look slid on the sword, an instrument as if created specifically under his hand. The subtlety of the magic sword blade impressed with its art and complexity in manufacturing. The hero had no doubt. It was worth the master to look at this weapon, as he would have a desire to test her for strength, dividing the sword in half. Due to the filling of the blade with magical energy, it remains inviolable even under the strokes of the most severe hammers. No scratch will appear on its surface. The confidence that the sword will never lose sharpness and will not split into pieces captivates the spirit. Extra strength of the blade and the news gives a mysterious spell, carved by the master on steel. The vagina of the hero, expelled from rare elves' silver, absorbed magical energy by themselves. They should only be near the charming aura. Thanks to this, even a regular sword seemed like a real magical relic. Ice disagreed with the master Koval, noting that he was still mistaken. Silver had a simple touch to lift a wave of magic. Barely, the sword was in the vagina on the belt as a new force poured into the blade. Everything exactly as warned, a real surprise could chat every step. Only his creator, Blacksmith, could appreciate the true power of Iso-san's magic sword. But despite this, the magic blade of Koshman exceeded it by power, though it remained useful only in very specific situations. The hero, holding a burning sword in his hands, turned to Koshman with a proposal to use a frosty blade. A combination of fire and ice promised to look truly exciting. Koshman agreed with delight. The opponent, and at the same time the spiritual reflector of ice, he once walked next to him. But their roads parted like their magical swords, different in essence and power. The satellites stopped on the outskirts of the city. It was here that the traveler decided to stay, declaring his intention to stay on the spot. Friends exchanged the last words, and Koshman, raising his hand, silently spent the hero with his gaze, saying goodbye to the last time. A small half-blood, probably one day, wants to step on the path of magic. Then, it is possible, Isa will turn here again with him. When this moment comes, Lukrovka may well reach a good age, and may even be completely old. The hero plunges into a dreamy contemplation, lifting his gaze to the sky with the spirits. It was a desire to impress everyone with incomprehensible creation, an unprecedented magic sword that will be born through his inspiration and skill. He believed in all his heart. It would be a discovery that will change the idea of the swords forever. Standing in the center of the city arena, the guy studied the map carefully, trying to understand the complex network of streets and the location of buildings around him. The magical forces only recently obeyed my will, and this was a wave of incredible delight in me. Galrat Znichev, due to the approaches of the elves, declined the local aristocracy, and the real power rolled into the hands of the royal house. Meanwhile, rumors spread. The demons in the region were increasing, and no one knew what it would end. The Republic of Vielstika pleased the guests with fish for every taste, and in Braudrians appreciated sophisticated ceramics, which were admired far beyond its borders. Having wondered if it will take several days to get to the capital of Zaina, he also remembered the children of a noble Eln. Thoughts about the future meeting raged in the head of the hero. Stopping at the cozy race in the heart of the fresh capital of Zanji, the young man immediately noticed a gorgeous soft beds that promised a vacation after a long journey. But the unexpected knock on the door broke silence and set up a new course of events. With a smile turning to the hero, he politely asked for an unexpected presence. A warm smile lightened Gerda's face when she turned to Mr. Ice, carefully reminding how long it went from their previous meeting. Sweet memories emerged in her memory. That's how they said goodbye last time. Issa did not miss the opportunity to notice how unknowingly improved Gerda's appearance, noticing her new confidence and freshness. The Ludrians took places at the negotiation table, an obvious sign that the apology to the elves is not far off. The hero with a light movement asked Aaron to join, and the girl, without hesitation, settled next to him. The eastern part of the country was at the epicenter of the tragedy, which forced the inhabitants to flee from their homes, covered with horror before trouble. Food reserves were melted in front of the eyes, and it was difficult to call the crops comfortable. Even the latest leather products had to lose, which is why the whole state was stuck in despair. From now on, no one dared to even get closer to these ill-fated lands. Exports stopped, and the states quickly oriented. Support from the outside no longer came from the outside, so every nation began to protect its resources and rethink priorities. Meanwhile, the kings, feeling a favorable moment, decided. It is time to act decisively and move on to the offensive. The hero's reasoning suggested that royal families would try to take advantage of the latest moments to restore their positions. The realization that the time for action has not yet come did not prevent him from feeling grateful. It was the night attack from heaven that gave him a chance that brought him closer to the desired result. A light smile illuminated her face when she revealed a mystery. She followed the master of Issa in everything, trusting her own heart. The need for Khaleesi and Martini was life for her, just like the belief that the country of her relatives should not disappear from the face of the earth. Listening to these confessions, the hero answered with a warm smile. Thoughts involuntarily drove to the expensive hearts of people who still lived in the arms of that kingdom. Many riddles were still waiting for their unraveling. Under the cover of night cities, among the shimmering shadows in the elves' forests. However, the hero's faith remained adamant. The arena will be able to overcome any test of its own. Without doubt, the real heroine stood before everyone. The excitement turned out to be useless. No reason confirmed his fears. Suddenly, the hero was interested in the location of the little elf, and Aaron assured that he was nearby. According to her words, the young man concluded that the boy implies, it is unlikely that his heart would be filled with joy if the girl suddenly revealed the truth. The present moment is nothing more than a slight dream. Jean was asked to know when he wakes up, and then the guy returned to the place. Waiting patiently, he allowed himself a little rest, and Aaron at this time wanted to find out one detail. Only her desire is enough, and such a question would certainly break from her mouth. That is why the half-lives gave this such weight. Their lives are more fleeting than other races. Therefore, every sincere statement or a manifestation of sincerity they cherished, as if the most valuable treasure. I was scared of the very idea that such words could break the heart of ISO. There was a difficult thought in reflections. Did my emotions disturb her? Or maybe, at heart, there was a comparison of us with him. The excitement of how many days after his death was left. It did not rest her. Therefore, she kept the things that reminded of this man. did not dare to release at least a crumb of memories. At that time, the hero did not think about the future. Only sometimes he was thinking that even her life would be much shorter than him. Fear of such things would mean complete loneliness and refusing to communicate with people. But he did not even want to imagine such a shadow of life. In the distant past, his friends left him in a way of words. They turned into a source of thoughtfulness and a barely tangible sadness on the soul. The images of their faces have long been erased in memory. The events of the past days have changed new ones, and these phrases were stubbornly kept in consciousness, without giving neither themselves nor their former environment. Flying high above them, the spirit was a sign. The baby had already left this place far behind. With a smile on his face, rising into the air, the guy announced his flight. The thoughts of the hero captivated a variety of fates. People, yards, half-lives. Everyone sought to be involved, despite how long they were allotted in this world. Indifference is not for them. Even if his own path is endlessly long, and the spirit will live tirelessly for centuries. Now it is important only one. To live your life so that it does not leave the shadows of pity. Go forward without looking back. Seeing the baby open his eyes, he immediately put his palm to his heart. Such a touching and gentle picture unfolded in front of him. He looked at the boy with surprise. The hero suddenly realized that the baby was still without a name. Without inventing anything better, he just told him a greeting. Looking at the hero just in the eye, the girl confessed. Really, it is extremely great. The conversation relentlessly returned to the mystery of the immortal soul of the highlights, when the tiny hand unexpectedly touched Isa's face. In his thoughts, he broke out about Mitarin, who has long been explaining the essence of the hylific nature. The smile shone to Isa. The baby was incredibly smart and piercing. The special ability, which belonged exclusively to elves, lived in it since childhood. If only the hero could call the spirits, the journey would turn into an exciting adventure with an ally who would never betray. On the side, this picture seemed strange. The children's hands stretched to the cheeks of Ice, and in response he gently carried his palm on the head of a half-elf. It is unknown why, but both at these moments were genuinely rejoiced. The letter was reported that the birth was in the winter, and the name for the baby was not chosen at the time. Surprisingly, the guy even liked this detail. He saw something good. The infant was in his reliable hands, and without hesitation, he announced his baby's new name loudly. He was first named the older elves of the forest for the first time, which he immediately mentioned, saying that name aloud. This day, the figure of the guardian became even more important. A real friend appeared in his face. They wondered if he would have something against him if he had a little wine. Lowering his head with a slight excitement, he heard how the hero calls his acquaintance with him a great honor. Anase's warm smile on the mouth of Anasi touched the boy's cheeks, and gladly said in his voice how happy to meet him. Carefully lifted the small arms filled with tenderness and sincere admiration for what can take care of the baby. From delight, his voice was heard in space. He was a source of unspeakable joy for him, and the opportunity to be near gave true happiness. Putting the baby back, the hero froze for a moment, not understanding which step to take the next. The desire to go on a trip without a detailed plan seemed too risky. Only Aaron should find out how long notation will be inevitable. The arena did not want to indulge him, or indulge, because a real work was waiting for both of them. Issa decided that it is worth showing Vinov what the behavior of an adult in the working atmosphere should be. Only one worried. Who to trust him in the absence? Emma impressed everyone with her unbrokenness. Like a real hurricane, she broke Rudria. Only the outspoken repentance of the king forced Isa to retreat. And finally the long-awaited peace came down over the country. In the city, he was valued not only for perfect reliability, but also for the skill of spying, which he owned the stealthy of all. Odina could not be considered a worthy candidate. He himself did not hide that he was not delighted with children, but could also teach Wine all kinds of pranks. The surprise had mastered it. It was difficult to imagine that plans were built so far in advance. However, no evil thought was felt in the statements. Almost unlimited freedom allowed them to instantly evaluate the situation and immediately respond to the challenges. Meanwhile, the hero gradually courageous and grew up with his soul. The question was answered. The trip will start tomorrow, closer to noon. Finally, having become determined, the hero took with him the wine in the road and said goodbye to Aaron. Evenings passed in leisurely walks with narrow streets, nights in conversations under the stars, enjoying sweet, juicy fruits. The decision to pick up the child for their care has risen for various reasons. In the end, the victory did not reach the hero. Giving way to her, he sincerely congratulated the girl. The hobby overwhelmed her, and with a smile she confessed how she was happy to meet Win. At the same time, she was sincerely asked to share with her important, as long as their paths are going nearby. It was impossible to hold back the desire to grasp Win to himself, to hold his hand on his head, so she confessed that I did not deny. The search for a reliable person to care for Win forced the hero to go to the city. The road was not easy, because it was really important to find someone who could be fully trusted. It was at this point that the image of those who could become the perfect candidate popped up in memory. A generous reward was waiting for her. It is only necessary to give consent. The conceived things demanded to stay in the city for a year, or even 2. With what hobby she agreed to the proposal, and immediately promised to deal with all the things on her own. Moreover, she sincerely assured that the mother would definitely support their plans. The joy was overwhelmed. It is a pleasure to realize that Issa did not forget about it even after years. The girl kindly invited the baby to live in her home. For the hero, it was a real achievement. Although the wind is still confused, Isaha was confident with confidence in the future. Everything will soon become familiar to him. With the hope of the future, he expressed a common desire to overcome difficulties together and gradually learn among new people to make the adaptation easier. There was a joy on his face, but the famine quickly reminded himself of himself, so with interest the question of dinner. The girl smiled and shared her plan, a casserole with a paste, because this option was the most convenient and delicious for Vint. The amazing dish gave Vintage new sensations, and the juicy apples that were treated here had completed this gastronomic discovery. The admiration of the apples squeezed him, and the thought was, and what if the elves would become more if they tried apple dishes? On this hero, with a smile, noted that the elves were always great fans of fruit. Undoubtedly, the most delicious pie that the hero ever tasted was her hands. Meat and vegetables, though pleased, were still inferior to fish, which became the main star among dishes. He was fascinated by his luck, looking forward to the time when Ven became older. And in his soul, he was in the envy of his incredible happiness. Traveling with unknown ways and getting acquainted with amazing tastes inspired the hero to new accomplishments. The dream of separating these adventures with Venno warmed the heart, because together they could enjoy every moment, discovering a magical world of gastronomic discoveries and unforgettable places. No one was able to give him a sincere smile, even not having the strength to look in the eye. A clear awareness has cut through consciousness. The girl has a little time. The passerby, noticing the hero, stopped a step and went closer. It turned out to be one of the guild of the blacksmith, who, asking for an unexpected appeal, shared a request. Having remembered how he had once worked in him for a short time, from that it had been over 6 years, the man suggested to visit him as soon as a free minute. The heart was full of joy when it became clear that it was remembered. It is possible that the owner will again call for an important assignment. The idea of a small break seemed too attractive. A glass of fragrant wine complemented the evening perfectly. He decided to settle the business a little later, and now he was seduced by tea, which, incidentally, never tasted in this place. It's been a lot of time since it. A man who decided to instruct Oakham appeared. Among his responsibilities were, in particular, the repair of armor of city guards, for each piece made was paid separately. The second component was the technical management of the process. It was on his shoulders that the organization of work and monitoring on the whole mechanism of business lay. At the exhibition at the Association of Blacksmiths presented the sword, which I used in the past. The news about it has added a great pride to the man. It was worth finding out that the hero returned, as one of the masters decided to ask him to accompany him to another place. The master did not want to bother the hero once again, but the circumstances demanded to resolve some more urgent cases. An extraordinary event was an audience with the king himself, who, with genuine interest, asked about the elven blacksmith. The monarch solemnly stated that the hero is allowed to choose any treasure or miracle stored on the island. The first test involved the restoration of armor and sincere gratitude to the master for help. The blacksmith gladly accepted gratitude and noted that with such skilled hands, the hero could easily make big money. However, another refusal, and it will no longer be possible to keep it. A man with a sincere smile promised that in case of failure he would sincerely appreciate any advice that would share with him. In the past, fate linked the hero to the loud smithy, where he hardened the metal under the roar of hammers every day. With great pride, the opportunity was perceived to work next to Isa, a real blacksmith, equal to himself. It was in his society that the guy traveled to the fortress. For a while, the road came together with those blacksmiths who were long-standing work comrades. The joy of the meeting raged in everyone, as many years it has passed since their paths dispersed. The hospitable greetings were flowing to Ace, and the heart of the traveler himself was fully enthusiastic about returning to this workshop of friendship. Every morning brought farewell tears in the eyes of the hero. The baby stubbornly did not want to let go and begged to stay side by side. The girl carefully hugged the baby, filling words with genuine wishes for the whole day. The little crying boy caused the image of a child in memory, which yesterday uncertain the first words. Nearby, the caring girl gently comforted the little one, promising that in the evening there would be fun games of the open air. Inviting to look into the small window above the well, the girl noted, there was full of his friends. The tears disappeared from the eyes, and instead of despair, curiosity appeared, and the leg had already taken the way to the other way. He always found common ground with peers, and adulthood was already fluttering on the horizon. Children's games in the narrow streets of the town were full of fun. One of the guys promised to open a fascinating secret and invited the wine to go with him. While the young man sneaked behind the shed and slipped his cockroach under the nose, the girl on his face showed real indignation. Such a spectacle clearly did not please her. The confession was quiet. She wanted him to remain unchanged, exactly as he was. The glance of curiosity, she asked what his heart wanted at this moment. On this weekend he hoped to finally get out of nature, to combine camping with training. Suddenly, an event that changed everything happened. A stunning landscape unfolded from the city before his eyes. It was premature to teach wine to the art of battle, so this activity had to wait for the time that he strengthened. Instead, the guy gained life skills and revealed the secrets of the world around him. They began their journey with spiritualism, a mystical practice, which allows you to ask for support in the spirits. Invisible patrons have repeatedly stood on their side, which caused a deep gratitude. No less rejoiced in the spirits themselves, having the opportunity to help the mortal. Among them was the most impatience of the spirit of the wind. He had long dreamed of trying the famous wine, and only waited for him to be called to join. Issa smiled gently, subtly hinting the guy that you do not need to hurry. There are many obstacles to true power that cannot be ignored. Issa noted that now the top is too far. New difficult trials are waiting for everyone. Desperate in their own forces, the heroes turned to the spirit for support, because to fight on their own seemed to be an unbearable task. Having happy to accept the gift, the guy finally allowed himself to show genuine commitment. Asking something personally for himself has always remained for him an insurmountable obstacle. No wonder the strict framework of his upbringing condemned him to such stiffness. It was a decision to monitor his behavior. For this reason, Win captured the art of communicating with the spirits. It seemed that this knowledge could be useful. The true meaning of life is revealed by those who want to find, not just passively accepts everything that falls on fate. A handful of leaves fell from the bag when the Emperor of the Verse asked in the wind to return the force to these leaves. Finally, the requests of the heroes flew to the spirits of the wind, and the light leaves were circulating around. The surprised wind could not hide the delight, and the characters were invited to take part in this fascinating fun. As it turned out, both the powerful wind and the elusive spirit only dreamed of sincere game and fun. Gradually, the teacher discovered the secrets of communication with the spirits, generously shared his knowledge. In parallel, the group mastered the basics of counting, learning the foundations under its leadership. Despite childhood facial features, the boy has been 7 years old. If you explain in a simple and understandable language, new knowledge was given to him, albeit slower than others. However, later the need to learn to use my will disappear by itself. The boy learned new information instantly. Perhaps the whole thing is to constantly support the caring. The girl was sincerely pleased with his achievement, not hiding the delight of what ease he has mastered new skills. The idea of creating a wine that would impress the whole world echoes in the soul of the hero a bitter doubt. There was nowhere to retreat. It is only bold to put all the passion into every drop, hoping to justify the mistakes of the past. Apples on the plate. That's how Vanna appeared, full of worry, and wondered how many fruits were in front of him. Without any reflection, the guy said the exact answer. 2. At that moment, It seemed that the invisible cover of her tenderness envelops it completely. It has passed a lot of time from that time. Nada wondered the protagonist, or the true truth that his leg did not step into the church. A deep conviction lived in her heart. The guy truly appreciated the opportunity to study letters, master the letter, and find a way to understand with peers. When Nadia stretched out a clean bedding, Issa unnoticed her, nodding approvingly in her words. The world for everyone won their own shades. People looked at him with the eyes of their beliefs without concern to other people's thoughts. It was necessary to grow up to understand this truth and not to argue with it. Meanwhile, the church carefully selected children with a magical gift among those who came to free lessons. The chosen fate awaited the elected. They were sent to the main temple, preparing from them future priests. For this, families received a generous reward. Financial worries remained away from him, so no reason to say goodbye to wine. 10 years took to feel a little older for 1 year. Seamolfs have everything else. They only have 2 to 3 years for this. Compared to children, the Sale will always look younger than their peers. Sooner or later, it will turn to him a real test that will inevitably have to face. The life of a half-elf has opened in front of him completely different colors. The days among the higher elves are pouring in their own rhythm, and every moment seems special. In his opinion, there would be much better places for good wine than the environment in which they found themselves. Everywhere, though in the church, though on the streets, or near the house, many kids twitched. He wanted to listen to his long story. He could also be silent, only to allow the story to remain unprocessed. The stranger from distant lands and so felt alien here. But inside did not give up confidence. He should only hint, and she will not move out of place. But it was impossible to betray her trust. The sophistication of the high elf and the mystery of the half Elfius were woven in a harmonious tandem, giving them the ability to complement each other as it is under the power of only true souls. A year and a half later, the arena wrote a letter to him. The guy did not read any explanation, but this did not prevent the deep image from germinating in his heart. He firmly said, he leaves everything behind. He does not intend to go, because he wants to be near Nanda. Orthid tried grueling to persuade him, looking for significant and not quite convincing arguments, but Irina's promise was already made. Isayat noted Win's sincere commitment to this place. Therefore he opened to him that the words should be weight and promises to be revered and fulfilled. Vinus was asked to prepare a special gift for Nano, to express her sincere gratitude for support and say goodbye to her warm words. During the walk, the hero enthusiastically suggested Win to call the spirit to find a truly amazing stone. In less than in a moment, the boy chose the right direction and coped with the task without extra effort. According to this spectacle, the inhabitants of the shelter, while holding their breath, watched, admiring how skillfully he rotates a rare stone in his hands. When the package was ready, Van and I confidently agreed. Such a gift will definitely be delighted. The words of gratitude from the mouths of the boys were genuinely sounded, for care and cool ice for salvation. Further, friends warmly, with a slight joke, encouraged Vint to approach Nana closer. The nervous tension swept, and the confused gaze rushed to Nana. The box was extended to her, and with a slight confusion explained. This gift was created on their own, putting a part of the soul in it, appointing it. Permission to open a gift was an unexpected joy, and the contents of the box pleasantly surprised it. Space decoration from the Parmagren 8 gleamed incredible luxury. The gift symbolized the sincere, boundless devotion and purity of their relationship, where there was no benefit. In a candid conversation, a confession was made. The dream to say goodbye personally and give each other at least one sincere smile. Tears converted to the eyes of Hawait when he frankly confessed, the thought of divorcing it is breaking his heart forever. The hero did not think for a long time. He firmly picked up the boy in his arms, giving him a sense of security. A frantic cry escaped from his chest. The requirement to release and call Nana sounded unrestrained. Meanwhile, the girl, exhausted and devastated with pain, bent on her knees. On the way, the tears rolled through his cheeks, and the heart squeezed the heart. The desire to escape exceeded everything. But the hero had no right to leave his friend alone in the Jampermon. She may have enough courage to take care of herself, and lacking the power and determination of the hero to stand up for wine. It was impossible for Isa to postpone the departure. Anxiety was cramped in the chest, as this farewell could be the last. There was no tears to shed this evening. it would be too painful to hurt her. On the contrary, only sincere sympathy raged in the heart. The only sincere desire is that the separation is in peace, without pain and bitter words. Iron will have support ahead of Ludria, on a journey of Aaron, because helping the battles against monsters will be invaluable. The hero sought to protect the true hero from any danger, and the thought of how it upset it did not rest. Time here was losing its usual current. Ludria became a focus of non-enemy motion and inexhaustible energy for the hero. The locals were fussed everywhere, and numerous other creatures that gave the city a special charm were fussed. No one argued that these meetings are forever, or that a return here is no longer possible. The gentle smile of the hero suggested that tears are not a reason for shame. You should speak and give yourself a rest. The guy gently assured the wine that it is not necessary to restrain the feeling if the soul asks to cry. In Laudria, new acquaintances and loyal friends are waiting for him, and Iso himself has always promised to stay side by side. Tears carried uncertainty. It was joy, or maybe anger. Whatever feelings, both united the joint trials that they have courageously overcome. The tears are full of eyes and heart, covered by the dream, to become an adult as soon as possible, to finally feel like a real, strong person. Accompanied by a light wind, the guy entered the land of the kingdom of Ludoria, but the anxiety did not leave his soul. The earthquake turned the eastern part of the city into a real test. Narrow aisles and blockages forced to choose bypass. This was added to the persistent views of the locals, who stubbornly accompanied every step of the hero. Suddenly, one of the merchants loudly proclaimed, in front of them the same wandering elf. The general silence penetrated everyone. It seemed that the hero changed his decision and returned. Among the foreigners, one seemed to be familiar. Only after a short pause did Issa recognize in him a master, which made a new knife once. The meeting was accompanied by a sincere smile of a man who noted that many years had passed since then, and confessed that rumors about the affairs of ESA had flew far around. Assuming that the young man was heading to Dodzio-K High, an idea emerged unexpectedly, to convey something important through him. However, no reward was required. The help was quite selfless. Gratitude for the abundant piece of meat voiced only part of my joy when the generous seller stretched the hotel. By talking, I hinted that I would stay in the capital for a long time, and if you need a new knife, I will contact this master. The merchant's smile confirmed. He is pleased with the future meetings and sincerely supports my decision. Intrigued, the man turned to the hero, trying to find out more about this little miracle. With a sincere smile, he invited the boy to visit his store, promising to treat the most delicious meat in the whole capital. After his friend's look, the main characters quickly moved to the dozo. As soon as he stepped on the top floor, the hero not surprised that the room had full faces he had not met. A few guys with a serious look blocked the path of the elf with the baby, warning, "A place is a dozo of the Azogi family, and the foreigners here are here." With a light smile on his face, a stranger reported that he had come with peace and sincere friendship. Lifting the boy with an unexpected gift, the surprised kid quietly uttered the words of gratitude. A confident male voice came behind, which emphasized the importance of this personality for them. The first student appeared in front of all, the one who once gave the second life and then left his walls. A warm smile shone on her face when she saw a leading student. Today he visited earlier than always. A light smile appeared on her face when she turned to Master of Key, stating that the decade had not yet passed. The little elf immediately attracted the attention of the Masters of the Key. She wondered who was the baby. The boy picked up a new friend in his arms and told him with warmth how he accidentally came across him, and since then, a sincere friendship has come between them. The passion in the eyes of the boy and sincerity in the words were felt by a Key, and she noted with a smile that his character did not change at all over time. With warmth on her face, she asked Mizuyu and Shizuki to accept him, like a younger brother. In response, the children shone with sincere smiles and promised to keep her request. The mother's proposal to move to the room in which he once resting, along with the promise of a treat, caused joy in the hero. In the soul, the confidence was immediately ripe. These two are kids' Kigai. With a gentle smile, the mother noted that everything was in it. Nothing had changed. Several weeks have passed since the protagonist, along with the wine, first appeared in Ditzo. The friendly company of the boys carelessly played in the courtyard when suddenly the vocation came in the noise. Someone shouted. Skillfully taking care of the baby, the gaze from time to time stopped at the mentor without losing vigilance. Over the last weeks, searches for Kai's swords have been absorbed all the time of the hero, and the games with wine and children have become daily. Due to the fact that all the worries were turning around the kid, meetings between friends were less common. When the fun came to the end, the hero himself suggested that the children entertain together without his participation. The ruthless rage of the master made the students shiver with fear. His most effective reception was left out of sight, and this was a great angry mentor. It was about a month from the moment the sword lay in his palm for the last time. During this time, the key was to become much stronger and fill with new force. It is enough to prove her skill, and the girl will stop her reproaches. With this thought, the guy decided to contact the Kia master to appreciate his ability to own a sword. The expectation was so long that in the soul began to rage real emotional storms. The challenge was made. Instead of a wooden sword, it was suggested to use a real weapon, which was always at the opponent. The legendary blade, created by the skilled hands of the rubber master. The leisurely movement accompanied the inner indecisiveness. Confidence was still shaking, and the thoughts of his own inability to master the true power of the sword did not leave. But despite doubt, the blade slightly slipped out of the vagina, ready to reveal the unknown potential. A few decisive sword strokes, and the weapon is already rising high above his head. Stress and anxiety appeared on the faces of Kia and those who stood around, immediately rushing into the eyes of everyone around. The shock quickly changed the explosion of admiration among the students. They covered the hero with praise. They are convinced that the first student did not let down this time. The atmosphere was filled with pride, but suddenly the silence broke the voice that came from behind the castle gap, turning to it. When an unusual grimace appeared on her face, anxious anticipation immediately stopped in the hero's chest. Something clearly heralded. The silent nod conveyed more than words, because this gesture was hidden. Everything is much more confusing than it could seem at first glance. A whole swarm of issues circled in her head, and before you voice at least one of them, she focused on expressing her own vision of his abilities. The watchful eye noted that on a long road he did not stop improving his skills, and now his skill exceeded the former level. For these changes, Issa was a sincere gratitude. Despite numerous workouts, it seemed that no skill was needed in practice, and as it was confirmed, intuition did not fail. Among the skills that seemed unnecessary in battle, in fact, one was created only for visible effect. Suddenly it turned out, the true power of the hero came not from a steel sword, but from a completely different source. Without a shadow of doubt, Marie was convinced that one measured and accurate sword, he destroyed the enemy's weapon, as if he had been made of fragile glass. All this is reminiscent of the usual street performance keikis. No true skill in keeping a battle behind your shoulders. He wanted to make sure that he came on the same rake as his mentor at one time. With such a speed of development, it is unlikely that he will be able to become a prominent sword master. The main reason for this, as it turned out, is hidden in the lack of real fighting in Ace. The soft smile lightened her face, and she sincerely confessed. It was this trait that she was extremely aware of him. Thoughts on how to correct everything were circulated in their heads, while Kia confidently ordered other students to start sparring. The weeks passed from the moment the fate threw the Isu to the north of Ludoria, to the very border with the vast empire. The words of support were heard. Return. We will wait. They were handed a boy with a horse, preparing for a new path. Arena appealed to him to contain the threat of an attack by the Empire Fodor. After changing the ruler and the general instability of the kingdom, the army of the kingdom significantly lost power. Although their recklessness became the source of present troubles, it was still unacceptable to allow hostile occupation. The thought of the vain effort in the negotiations was depressing the hero, because above all he wanted the conversation to bear fruit. Close friendship with elves has always been one of the main features of Ludoria. They did not seek to start new neighbors, because with long-standing acquaintances, it is always easier to find common ground. In addition, the advantageous neighborhood with these inhabitants promised the Ludorians many new opportunities, which is why they stepped forward with richness, without losing faith in their own purposes. It is easy and confident to overcome the path, paved by human efforts to meet dreams. Calling the spirits that live in the majestic mountains, with a sincere request, he addressed them, hoping that his voice would have fallen to their world. In order to block this path, he was ready to demolish the whole rock. It seemed to be decades before this road was returned to life, and the kingdom would finally be left alone, ceasing to ask for their tireless support. Doubts have made a soul. Will he have the courage to oppose the imperial soldiers? The imagination drew wealthy and bold fighters, who had a similar step, but it seemed almost impossible among them. The hero's soul did not believe in his own determination. The sophistication of the Kia sword was fascinated, giving birth to a fervent desire to master weapons with the same perfection. The skill remained only one step. The dreamy skill was already felt nearby. The real dream of Ice is to reach new peaks of power. However, he did not find inspiration for this. The undoubted belief in its own capabilities seemed almost self-confident, but in the heart of Ace, there was no room for itself. The former amateur in the soul was in no hurry to become a real fencer. The unknown of the future only occasionally made one think that one day thought could change. On the way home, Aaron had an opportunity to meet the hero, and the words of delight for his skillfully fulfilled mission were heard from the heart. The news of the hero hastened to inform Kahaki. Her gaze faded, and the voice sounded bitterly. Such a decision is fully in line with his character. Sumi grabbed a girl. Now she was not destined to see how he reveals her sword in all grandeur. During his studies at the main school, when the city of Kosogi became a home for him, the hero was a hard time wrapped his sword, which was to be a gift for the king at the fair. The expression of the key, frozen on the face, did not go out of the head. Not finding a place, he decided to change the mood at least a little, to miss a glass of the shackled and a good snack. The thought of enjoying a glass of wine in the open air came from itself. The perfect solution for the day. While the hassle continued to clean up the workplace, someone's voice was suddenly resorting to the young man. "Something happened, Shitsuka?" the guy asked with interest, without realizing that the baby was already preparing to turn to him with a special request. Turning to Issa, he asked him to take the path to Viscor. The reasoning about the cause of the Suzuki's visit was not rest, but in the end it was thought. What a wonderful idea, because it was a long time ago to get into the place where they were treated with wine. After agreeing to this adventure, the hero still warned, "The road promises to be long and will move to Flute." Before leaving, Shizuki was instructed to first contact her grandmother or Kicha for permission. Otherwise, relatives will be concerned and decide as if they were stolen. Having confidence that the grandmother would not mind, he dared to turn to her for permission. Having expressed his sincere gratitude to the hero, Suzuki rushed to her grandmother for permission. According to him, uncertainty was easily read. Kyo is unlikely to support this idea. Meanwhile, an involuntary smile appeared on the face of Isis. Finally allowed, and the soul ice has received long-awaited peace. Feeling the true affection for Shizuki and Mizui, Finn joined their little company with genuine joy. In the morning, the hero skillfully hung 2 birds for breakfast, which he was amazed at a lot. The atmosphere was filled with joy, and the conversations of the children did not subscribe throughout the trip, giving everyone a great mood. Having made sure that they have a citizenship, the judicial soldier greet the guests into Vist Court, making it clear that they were desirable here. A warm smile blossomed on his face, as soon as they came to memory the day when, along with Aaron and Martin Cross, they first crossed the gate threshold. For 15 years, this city has been separated from the moment when the gnome has left it. The look of Aesel immediately fell down, and anxiety was reflected on the face. The warm touch of the palm touched the elf's cheeks, and Aesel immediately dispelled the alarm with a gesture that was fine. It is not necessary to worry, because the hearts are crowded with happy memories, and these tears are pure joy. It is at this moment that Suzuki, turning to Issa, prompts him to focus on. There is a noise ahead. The young man comes vocal exclamations and calls as if people are trying to attract his attention. The hero shared that he plunged into the memories of his first journey to this city. A warm smile appeared on the face of Rhoda. He confessed that he had not ever had to come back here, so he sincerely rejoices that fate gave him such an opportunity. A cautious request for one case has caused a soldier's smile. He gladly said that since the increase of such duties are no longer within his competence. Bright air greetings of Rod and his comrades, supported by a cheerful company from the yard, have caused Ias a sincere and carefree laughter. Issa headed to Clace's home in Martin, an elderly woman whose face did not show any recognition on the door. In order not to waste time, the guy immediately introduced himself. It was wondered whether it was possible to find adhesives or Martin at home, because he came here for the keys from his own home. The hostess stopped in surprise, not immediately realizing what the matter, but promised to find out the owner soon. In the hands of the girl appeared a neatly wrapped roll, which resting on her head, and inside a bottle of martini was hidden. A joyous meeting gave the boy the opportunity to openly admit, he faces a real beauty. With a slight smile, the girl joked about their long separation, and asked if he lost the key to the house. I immediately warned. In the house a little mess, especially in the bedroom, so it would be better to remove before returning. The idea was that the boys did not stay long. Moreover, the return of Kleem was expected from a minute to minute. Having looked at the children standing behind the hero, the surprise flashed in her eyes. It seems that Aaron has not yet had time to tell anything. Meanwhile, the guy introduces her to the baby. It turned out that it was the same Suzuki whom he took care of in the capital. As soon as they arrived, they immediately moved in the way back. True astonishment raised in the soul not when a hero or famous wine appeared before his eyes, but at a second when the look was greeted. The greatest revelation was the awareness. Claes is Suzuki and Mizuki's father. It was impossible to understand how everything could turn into this way. Their joint days were more likely to have a simple friendship rather than a romantic hobby, especially. Then his life was already filled with his own family. In addition, the very essence of Kyo would not allow to destroy someone's warm family foundations. The idea of who is the father of Kia's children did not rest, but this question remained unleashed. Shizuki may have had his own answer to it and deliberately appeared here, but the secret remains. Why did Kia allow him to leave? The questions fell without stopping, but only sighs broke out of my insight, and I accepted for myself. All this is not worth it. No matter who the parents had to become a Vienna, it could not shake warmly at him. Actually, both Kia and her mom were accepted by Mitsuya and Suzuki, leaving no doubt about her love for them. Returning to the home of ice, three friends immediately plunged into a dream, feeling the long, awaited peace. Suddenly, you have come to understand. Knowing everything is not necessary, it is enough to be support for children. With a sincere smile on his mouth, the man wished a little good night. At breakfast, Shizuki, the son of Kuihai, suddenly announced his desire to challenge Lord Claes himself, known in Rudria as the Holy Sword and the best of all swords. The face of the Isis clearly reflected the confusion. It seems that the nickname Holy Sword sounds for him for the first time. The tweed look of the hero fell on the table, and a cup of tea lay next to the short bell. He had nothing against the dinner on the wooden swords in the afternoon, and it was at that moment that it finally came. That's why Suzuki so persistently sought this visit. Grabbing a convenient moment in the middle of a frantic fight near the tents, the glue sharply pulled his hand forward, and his unexpected blow to the stomach shot the opponent from the pantalik. Despite every missed blow, the guy pleaded with a revenge. The glue has won the reputation of the swordmaster with brilliant equipment, not gross power, and now, with his shoulders for more than 40 years, he kept dignity. In the midst of the match, Win, sliding his gaze to Suzuki, urged not to give up and cheer for him more loudly applause. From childhood, Suzuki has impressed everyone around his bright talent. Fate generously awarded him both environment and natural abilities. But even these benefits did not allow him to match the legendary Sword of the Sword. Once again, a strong opponent skillfully knocked out the blade from the hands of Suki, again won an undeniable victory. Each subsequent defeat was ignition in the heart of the guy is increasingly fierce. The hint of Suzuki called for moving forward, tirelessly provoking a new offensive. This competition gained increasing sense for glue. Just so, through the game of the blade, the young man tried to feel at least a crumb of communication with his father. It is problematic to determine the true feelings and thoughts of adults in this situation. However, it is easy to imagine what emotions raged in their hearts and what they could say. Make sure that the calm dominated, the hero realized. Only Suzuko hides some intentions, while the rest remained away from any pranks. There is no cause for concern. The hero chooses to stay away. Understanding the inevitability of fate fills it with peace. Their paths are already intertwined, and the meeting will inevitably come in due time. From the side, everything looked as if this duel was inevitable. Two ways had to cross. Claes's gaze, full of anxiety, slid along the Suzuki, and a bright bloodstream flowed from her nose. The hero was already convinced that Suzuki would not stand his attack, because she seemed ruthless and final. But, contrary to expectations, the opponent did not fall in the spirit. He stubbornly held, tirelessly looking for a way to victory. At that moment, the real essence of Suzuki revealed, unwavering thirst for power and unbreakable will. Without the hesitation of Suzuki wiped his nose and squeezing his fists, he resolutely repeated his request for a duel. The month has passed from the last journey to the city, and Suzuki's sister could still not put up with the fact that only a brother had such an adventure. Outrage was burning in her chest. Such travels seemed to her true injustice. The hero did not have time to look at him with a frantic passion attacked a angry Mitsuhao. This made him firmly decide, the next journey will certainly go on the road with her. And at this point, Shizukuki gave his parents souvenirs, receiving their heartfelt gratitude. In this fussy place, despite the brittle and vanity, the words of the mother sounded strictly. Yet Mitsuki, a gentle girl. If the trip lasted only a few days, it would be easier to understand, but a whole month away from home. To smooth out the guilt, he decided to apologize to the unusual way. He forged a sword for them. Under the pressure of Mitsuki, seeking to earn her forgiveness, the blade took shape and meaning. The rays of the sun made their way through a thick branch, when a small company was a leisurely path near the capital. Children's laughter was heard between the trees. The baby was running happily, enjoying his carelessness. Once upon a time, formidable monsters were chatted here, but now the surrounding thickets have become calm and safe. The feeling of well-deserved holidays enveloped everyone. The long work gave them the right for this moment of true joy. Children's laughter sounded around, filling the air with joy. Mizuki suddenly grabbed a shadow of a mysterious cave in the green thicket, and without restraining curiosity, she turned to Ishaki with the question of this mysterious place. The short answer was strictly, "It is a huge snake shelter, and it is better to stay away from this place." Mizuki asked if there was a monster living there. It was heard that Issa had not intended to fight or win a monster. With a slight smile, an explanation was made. To kill without a reason he does not like, even when it comes to the monster. Only if it decided to have it. The surprise of children had no limits. Such an opinion that the snakes are at the table. They have never occurred. The purpose of the trip was completely different. There was no thing about hunting for the monster, so Mitsuki urged to move forward. Suzuki and Mitsuki grew under the close supervision of the Didzio mentor. Elegant manners, sincere concern for the environment, these features distinguished them between others. However, childhood innocence lies in external maturity. The care of the mother and the tenderness of the grandmother wrapped them. But the warmth of parental love remained only a dream. Suzuki stubbornly questioned Klesa, trying to show who is really stronger, and Midzo, barely crossing the threshold of the house, staged a real scene without holding back emotions. The image of these two gave a sense of casual charm and sincere defenselessness. Vizua's gaze noted how suddenly Issa was detained and immediately called for him. Step by step, the kids suddenly came in front of a giant tree. The mighty giant among others, who risen to the sky, struck them so that the breath was taken over by the time, and it seemed to be frozen. The spirit tree revealed its charm only in whose surroundings were a special person with the ability to notice ghostly silhouettes. Ice felt time to open this incomprehensible beauty to others. The realization that Mizu and Norvin do not find this hidden place filled the hero with peace. For elves, it had a special price. A genuine smile appeared on his face when he noted with his eyes that the tree had gained strength and blossomed profusely. Looking closer, the boy noticed something unusual and immediately paid the attention of Exiled. The gaze stopped on a flower that blossomed against the time, as if nature had decided to surprise everyone with an unexpected miracle. The warm smile shone on the face of Eland, as he suggested that he thought it was that the spirit of the tree probably rejoiced in their arrival. Immediately afterwards, he made a joke. Why not go in search of something delicious? The children supported this idea with delight. Juicy toasted mushrooms and a fragrant rabbit cooked just at the fire were added to the list of dishes this evening. Zui sincerely thanked Aiza for unforgettable moments together, confessing that she had given her real pleasure this day. Fire tongues have fun dancing in front of their eyes, making her think, what if fate led to be a real adventure search? There were no ideas, although everything would become clearer if she tried a snake while keeping her face with the same unfriendly expression as that girl. The anger broke out in the soul of Mizao, when the crowd began to mock it, ruthlessly pulling his cheeks. The little girl has not reached the age of 10 yet, so it remained a lot of time to decide what trail it is to step in the future. Faithing, the guy laughed, and then hurriedly apologized to the girl for his unrestrained fun. Perhaps fate has suggested her to try herself as adventurers. The emergence of this opinion has encouraged the idea. It was time to take care of the appropriate weapons and armor again, as it happened. The weekdays in the dozo stretched monotonously and measured. The boys watched closely at how their companion was growing, who sought strength and constantly sought rapid change, often revealing their doubts about Issa. The workouts brought them together, and warm evenings ended with friendly dinners at a common table. For 8 years, she flashed out of the moment when they first stepped on the floor of this. Outrage on Midzoon's face, Suzuki, left no place. She quickly went straight to the main character. Ice had already suspected that a pre-trial dash was heard due to the next damage to his sword. However, this time everything went completely differently, and the first guesses were false. Grandma's calling was heard, and Ice asked when her turn was replaced by her. With sadness in her eyes, watching her life spark slowly went out, he promised to take care of everything personally. Finally, the hero expressed his gratitude, said goodbye to Mizao and Caesar, leaving them behind. 8 years have passed, and the twins grew up to 15 years, when each of them received their own sword as a gift. However, although they improved in everything, even the wine remained unattainable for them. It would hardly be surprised that the feeling of his own otherness accompanied the guy from a young age, because the pace of his development was strikingly different with their peers. The powerless changed something, eventually locked himself and departed from the children's society. Despite all the difficulties, true gratitude caused the twins in his life. So many happy moments together. However, the insidious transition age brought its challenges, and eventually came a cool request: to keep the distance, not to approach. With genuine joy from returning to Dozo, overflowing with excitement, he politely asked to allow him to enter the room. Recently, Mother's health has deteriorated significantly. Summer and ailments have stubbornly took their own. At the request of the woman, the guy appeared here to talk to him. Just looking at her, it became clear. Her life almost went out. With a gentle smile, the woman asked him to talk alone. The thoughts of apology did not leave her. She sought to find strength and ask for forgiveness. Having buried her husband, the woman felt that her own existence too would disappear, and the little Keel would remain alone. It was then, in the arms of pain and Sum, they tasted ice cream together. Fragile heat in the cold. The house belonged to 2 women, so the new guest caused them caution. However, it has not been a long time, as it easily became part of their daily healing from the disease, the cessation of hostility with Lauder, and the recovery of Dadzio. All this was made possible by his efforts. It was his support that allowed his daughter to become a real sword craftsman. He did not need any remuneration. The hero sincerely appreciated the opportunity to remain a student along the way. Her figure shone on their path like a leading star leading through darkness. At first, the distrust of him mastered him, and the sincere pleading of the woman and her persistent assurances that this was not an exaggeration forced to think. Their pupils grew into real students, who are able not only to master new knowledge, but also to protect the authority of Dow Jones. The skill of possession of the sword was given to her at a cost of difficult efforts, and thanks to perseverance, she mastered fencing to perfection. All her efforts were directed to one thing: to give him a chance to ever step again with his native land. The heart full of dreams of motherhood appealed to the famous swordsman and his wife, with a request that had to change their fate. In the end, the real picture of the past appeared before the hero in all his truth. The confusion raged in her head, because it was not possible to understand why those people could not simply refuse her immediately. The argument that the difference in life expectancy has played a major role in the separation of Eren, and the clichés, sounds convincing. Probably, this circumstance forced Martin to make their decision without deciding. The reason remained unclear, and perhaps everything happened only because none of them refused the daughter of this request. Perhaps the fear of her was so fond of them that no one dared to contradict. In the end, the parents allowed the daughter to do the way she wanted. The hero did not know what a dark fate could inadvertently bring to her, while the woman only kept a mysterious smile on her lips. The deepest mystery hid Kyo's love for him. The feeling that remained as bright as on the first day did not go out over the years. In all her devotion, she dreamed of passing the sword to the descendants, having only one true purpose. Returning here for him would be a real holiday. Everyone was looking forward to this moment. The woman knew well. Kia could hardly agree that these details would open to him. But the mother's heart did not allow this secret to be unleashed, even if the truth should only be shed before death. Once upon a time, anger and insulting on him were burning in his heart, but now the soul enveloped unusual peace. She looked after the children with her mother's warmth, and each of them grew up a real person. And when the hero returned, his sincere smile illuminated her heart with hope. The warmth touched the small palm, but did not say a word about the key to life. It was enough to carefully cherish her love in the depths of her own soul. The promise he gave to her remained in the heart of his pain. It was only 5 days after the conversation as she went to another world forever. No matter how much time has passed in mourning for those who have gone, the past will not change. There will only be memories that live in the heart. Years will fly until the moment when the sheet will be waiting at the threshold. In that letter, the teacher asked for the help of a smart person and invited to come if there was a free minute. Therefore, the attention he paid to is quite natural. In recent years, the steadfast triumph of the swordsman's competitions has been the title of winner. However, this was not proof of absolute skill. A real champion, a gnome with a perfect reputation, left the arena and returned to its native mountains. The emergence of a new Slurry King has radically changed the situation. In this country, public status is inextricably linked to the skill of forging iron. This time everyone realized, on the horizon was a great struggle, because the opponent seemed terrible. Together with these thoughts, although such hope could seem selfish, a fervent desire encompassed that the gnome still fulfilled this promise. For the sake of creating a country where the elves could live and rejoice, the hero assured Vin he will go to the famous state, and he will learn from his own eyes from the person whose intentions she hides. The heart squeezed from the desire to leave a friend nearby, but the decision to go together was already final. The hero did not leave the thought, it is only necessary to turn away, and Issa is certainly something. The idea was annoyed. He is perceived by the ill and do not trust any business without control. Observing each movement only further added anger. However, he did not dare to contradict. Because they insisted, he had to step into this unusual adventure together. Due to the natural openness of the dwarfs to new acquaintances, there was a hope that there would be a loyal friend. Having realized this, the hero set himself the goal of helping to master the intricacies of communication with this people. Because a conversation was waiting for travelers to take more than 1 hour, he was aware that he had to talk to Kia and warn her for 3 months. They are going on the road tomorrow. A sad smile ran on her face when she said goodbye to them forever, but the promise from the hero made, he will certainly return. Time for him always moved differently. But it was in the final minutes of her life that a fervent desire to be nearby appeared. Only later did the bitter truth and important awareness revealed. The heart wanted to stay with her. He answered her sincere feelings. Death never seemed to him the last stop, because it was in her shadow that a new existence unfolded for him. Having lived for many years in the likeness of the majestic Elphia, it is not surprising if it still remains somewhere near, unnoticed. Ailey with a light smile watched the mischievous spirit that flew by, and caught himself in thought. In this creation lives a real miracle. An unforgettable memory arose in Kiro at a moment when the end of the key first opened before his eyes. The light fire of the smile illuminated the girl's face, and nodding she said, now it would be his promise. With warmth in the voice, the girl promised to be near when his last time. The smile flashed on the mouth of the hero. Even the wrinkles on her face did not hide that amazing beauty that did not dim over the years. Through the snowstorms and steep mountain slopes, Ro stepped forward, until he caught up with his mentor. The dwarf was quite surprised that the elf decided to go this difficult way, because he used to consider the people of the elves timid and invertebrate. At first, it looked like a guy was just giving up sports, but in fact, these exercises were also included in his daily hardening. Even the ghosts of this place favorably noted his triumph, feeling the power of his victory. The cool of the mountains wrapped stronger than the heat of the smithy, and the dwarf was pulling the things Isa. The suspicious smile appeared on his face when it became clear. These luggage is much lighter than iron ingots. He asked the guy to keep his eyes open, because I still need to conquer the last mountain. For most elves and people, these dwarf lands remain closed under a strict ban. Only persons with permission from the gnome conductor or with a prestigious blacksmith license issued by the influential state could be an exception to the strict rules. The hero could have swayed at once with 2 such valuable passes. In the gilding of the blacksmith, the walls were searched among the courtyards of an experienced conductor, but in response only uncertain assurances were heard without any specifics. The time spent together at the bar made it possible to get to know the mentor better, a person exceptional, whose unusualness was more than once surprised. Once upon a time, fate threw him into Ladlo, and later came a letter asking for help, which became proof of true trust. The story of the hero was buried. The interlocutor quickly assured that he had already grabbed everything. However, without being distracted from the glass, thoughts imperceptibly immersed in the depths of the past, allowing the sparkled memories to bring himself into the world of ancient events. He suggested lifting glasses and promised, if the elves manage to overcome the narrow path through the mountains, we'll take them on a journey with him. The wine received a warning. It leaves these places within 3 days, although in the air there was still a heavy smell of alcohol, from which it was almost bored. It was similar to my road, 2 weeks ago, when I, Geis, went on a journey with the leader. The underground gnomes stretched many kilometers, reminiscent of the majestic city-states, although people would mostly perceive all this only as a closed underworld. The conductor said that in these parts, tens of thousands of dwarves sparkle with their underground homes. Gnome guns wary of the path, but as soon as the name of his mentor came, the door to the hero opened without unnecessary questions. The capture of ICS was gripping from the first step on familiar streets. The soft warmth hugged the city, so unlike the harsh coolness of the mountains. This is what immediately fell into his eyes. The satellite paid attention to the cozy swallow nest nearby. A surprise was surprised around the travelers. The appearance of elves caused a wave of wonder. But suddenly a stranger came forward, decisively hindering them and ordering to stop immediately. Dwarfs were struck when strangers appeared in the midst of their possessions. It was unknown where the elves came from, which seemed to neglect all the rules of the limit. The gnome from the detachment dropped the hood from his head, opening his face. Sudden was surrounded by silence. Someone could not imagine that the elves appeared in this place. Meanwhile, the guard, cautious, but in a solid tone, urged the dwarfs to retreat. The smile touched his mouth when he imagined how the dwarves were self-confident. Direct and honest complaints have always seemed more valuable than cunning whispers behind your back. A glass of wine clasped him just on his head. A strict order to stay away sounded like a sentence. Going to the gnome, the hero politely greeted and named his name, saying that he was in this country to be a special invitation of his mentor. It remains dissatisfied with only trying to expel him with force. From these direct words, the gnomes looked at the gnomes. The frank boldness literally stunned each of them. The dwarves shouted to Grandar, inciting him not to give up Novikov. Paying attention to Isa's boldness, Grandar intended to show his strength and study the Zakvals to know his place. The voltage in the air is thickened. The fists are lifted to the face. The gaze broke out rage. A short, decisive gesture, and the order to get rid of Isofar sounded as if it were the last warning. If the Elfa gave their hands fragile like a young shoot, his appearance would have suffered a feeling of vulnerability, like a timid bird that was alone with danger. The mighty rough palms of Hex, similar to carrot stems, with a swing, were pushed simply on the face. The gnome fell on the ground, and the man asked what exactly had happened to him. According to him, the teacher exceeded all the power, and the force of his blow could cause frantic pain. Walking his hand, the man ordered the porch to rise and carefully, with a hidden distrust, examined him, trying to see if the true dwarf was actually standing before him. The hand confidently waved back, and here the gnome threw a warning. He would not be advised to despise my strength. Awesome aware. Everything begins. He was passionate about attacking the enemy. After completing the duel, the hero finally dared to turn to his mentor. Durug acknowledged that the student's actions were stunning him every time. If the young man had warned about his intention to cross the border in advance, all the troubles would be easily avoided. Probably the hero has already caught the essence. The gnome squeezed a stinking compress in his hand and firmly pressed him to the student. The smell was so unbearable that the guy immediately twisted, but the medicine worked instantly. The teacher was already clearly aware of the intention of ISO, but the battle revealed a secret. It was on his initiative that the elves stepped on these lands. Rumors about the mysterious elf, who boldly gave a Strusen elder just in the forehead, flooded the entire district. The voltage in the air reached the boundaries when a woman with a tray appeared in the door, politely inviting everyone to taste tea. The young desperation, which sparkled in the eyes of his wife, immediately fell into the eyes, forcing others to laugh. However, the harsh look of the man replaced fun. A direct gesture he made it possible for the boy to understand that such jokes are better to leave with him. The attempt to emphasize that the invitation of the elves, his initiative, has become obvious. The realization that this time competitors will abstain from the shocks on the reputation during these holidays awakened its sincere gratitude. The crumb of pride forced Bartfast to stay confidently. It was read in all its form. Failure or impotence was not for him, even when it was about caring for only one student. Finally understanding the reason, he hurried to apologize. Aswold has always been distinguished by great dignity. The past years have taught the hero to go on his own, so the need to ask for support seemed to him almost unknown. At first, they apologized for the inconvenience, but in response, the gnome only smiled gently, demonstrating his commitment to the young interlocutor. The easy touch on the abdomen accompanied sincere praise. Whatever he did not take up, everything turns out to be brilliant. Anyone who wins the dwarf Rudikope will receive the honorary title of the first high elf in this world. The smile illuminated his face when he confessed to his friendship. The palm was gently lying on the shoulder of the elf. A short cry broke out of unexpected pain, but the happy spark did not disappear in his eyes. Fate gave him the opportunity to meet such a mentor. Behind the door, a loud exclamation of wine came, and curiosity made them carefully look inside, trying to find out what was happening there. The void was surprised before the city gate. No girl was visible, although it was difficult to believe. One inquisitive boy noticed an interesting detail. In the one they were looking for, even there are no beards. Hot disputes were among the children, like a small fire in the evening. For the hero, it became a real discovery. Seva has grown 4 babies. Even more surprised was that even very young Svala could have fluffy beards. One of them jokingly emphasized, "He has been for 20 years, although it is only a dozen by human standards." How incredible that the first triumph in battle brought so much joy and admiration. Obviously, the mentor brought up his students, despite the elven origin. The pride and the emotion engulfed him when he noticed that everyday courage grows, stubbornness and true perseverance. The student was called closer and suggested to move to the most important. The mentor decided to reveal the main thing about the icy armor concisely. In fierce competitions between the best masters, only one gnome gained true glory. Roger was confidently distinguished between everyone, leaving competitors behind. Roger is remembered as a talented student Kaushman, not only a skilled wizard, but also a brilliant blacksmith, who was able to win recognition with his art. The skill of the blacksmith Roger was still missing. The mysterious content of Dwarf's words remained a mystery to the hero. Roger melted Mithril, giving him a new strength and form. Above all, special metal was distinguished among dwarfs, a surprisingly rare true symbol of monarchical power. The legendary stove, the only one on the whole edge, hid from unnecessary eyes and was able to withstand the crazy flames needed for its processing. It was allowed to touch this secret relic only to those who were worthy of the royal title. It was said that this furnace burns due to a true flame, torn from the depths of the earth's bowels. According to the legend of the elves, in its bowels tirelessly work underground masters' prints. Guy often wondered if these mysterious artisans would return here at least once again. Experienced yards and talented young masters with a magical gift gathered around him. He taught their skills in creating charming tools, and it was because of these works that the capable hands were first able to process mithril without the help of mysterious treasures. Soon this news got the hero himself, and the conservative prince raised a real rebellion. By taking possession of the throne, Roger opened a new era where magical talent could weigh more than any other virtue. The hobby was growing with the demand for mysterious artifacts, which were only subject to those whose veins had a real magical power. Instead, the Strokes, the masters of fire and metal, which were previously valued only for craft, felt the growing dissatisfaction with such a schedule day by day. Each of them sought to master the art of working with mithril. Looking back at the teacher with a slight surprise, he began to suspect that he adheres to the usual, long-standing rules. The fascinated reviews were heard in unison. Technology struck everyone into the heart. The unspeakable desire to get the throne was in the soul, because the good reason moved forward and did not leave the right to retreat. It was dreamed of a state where the elves could live carelessly, filling every day with happiness and harmony. The thought of how surprised all the dwarves would see it fascinated the imagination. In this region, no one even realized what the union of dwarves with elves could lead to. And among them stood a gnome that he thought, how many of his students were really close, loyal to his comrades? The pride squeezed the breast of the hero, so I wanted the cowboy to be near this moment. Meanwhile, from under the forehead, the dwarf with a suspicious smile looked as if he had already deciphered what charming artifact he came out of Roger's hands. In the arena, Kausman, probably, has long been fighting against Aias, without drawing his eye with a skillful duel, and in the imagination, as if his mentor would act in this situation.